Before we start investing Empire of Death, the season 1 finale of Russell T Davies' brand new era of Doctor Who, before we start investing that with the significance it deserves, I want to read out a quote from past Russell T Davies. Russell T Davies of 2008 in an email to Benjamin Cook. Russell said, "If we end up with a rubbish series finale, I'll be gutted. My God, I'll be suicidal. At the same time, I never have in my work let myself down. Not ever, not really, not profoundly. Is that an outrageous thing to say? But that's why I'm successful. I'm good at what I do. I work exceptionally hard. That doesn't mean everything that I've done has been brilliant or that every script that I've written has been good, but actually every piece of work has been done with good intent, to the best of my abilities, within the limits of my own talent and stamina. Every single thing. Or maybe I'm blind to proper disasters."
It's the second one.
Discussing Empire of Death, myself, Neo from Australia, Ingiga from England, Mira's from the USA. I think for this one, we should probably start like we sometimes do with the stuff we liked. What do you two think?
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, it won't take long, yeah.
Okay, what did we like about this finale?
Well, who wants to go first?
I thought it was fun that we revisited Roger Ap Gwilliam and got a bit of just some fun, harmless stuff with him. Because there was that moment midway through the episode where I was terrified they were going to do the worst thing possible and go back and explain 73 yards and make 73 yards a plot point and add loads of lore and canon and implications to 73 yards. And they did basically none of that. They swerved. And instead we've got to look at the proper Roger Ap Gwilliam timeline. We've got some teasing, I guess fun glimpses at that, a suggestion of this unseen adventure with the Doctor overthrowing Roger Ap Gwilliam. So that was kind of fun. You know, nothing particularly substantial there, but yeah, it was a nice shout out. And I like that he preserved the mystery to 73 yards.
I liked that so much. It's so nice to have something special sort of sectioned off, sort of preserved. You know, this isn't for Doctor Who. This isn't for Big Finish. This isn't for everybody else to fuck around with. This is my science fiction. This is my story. I'm not gonna let, like, the two comparisons that come to mind for me are Blink and Midnight. Now, in the case of Blink, Moffat was never able to keep himself from worrying away at the angels and their implications, and he's given us numerous follow-ups of varying quality. And by the end of his tenure, by the end of Time of the Doctor, he'd basically been reduced to shouting, "Look, angels! It's the Weeping Angels, aren't they cool?" And Moffat has just never been able to, I feel like he's never had the ability to resist that urge, Whereas Davies, the other point of comparison that came to mind was, of course, Midnight. And while there have been, at times, sort of echoes or implications of Midnight, they've never done, like Midnight 2, The Return of the Intimidating Knockers, They, it would have been so easy for, like, Journey's End to reveal that the Midnight Entity was actually Dalek Khan trying to return from the time vortex or something, So it's nice to see that Davies is still able to, he's able to approach the fact that he's dropped a fairly substantial chunk of lore in that in 2046 there's going to be basically a Welsh salamander, but he doesn't have to. He doesn't have to then also do a bunch of other. He doesn't have to ruin what made that episode so special, I find.
Yeah.
Even to the point, I've seen some arguments back and forth on whether this was okay, that the flashback to Roger Ap Gwilliam is of a scene we've seen, but not the dialogue from it. And I was fine with that. I like that it keeps it ambiguous as to the nature of, like, the 73 yards timeline version of that.
It makes it feel bigger as well, though we didn't see the whole interview, I think.
Yeah.
The other comparison with Moffat, just before we move on there, the other thing that Moffat refused to leave alone was the crack. Of course, the God complex and what was in Eleven's door.
Oh yeah.
In that episode, Moff came back and made it the crack for some reason. Literally. And and in this case, like, taking someone else's episode and just fucking it away like that. That was the worst. Way worse.
I always erase my memory of that because it's such a stupid resolution of that.
Same. So yeah, I'm glad RTD he understood so clearly what he was doing with 73 yards that he would not just immediately renege on it. So I think we can have some faith in him, at least to that extent.
Yeah. I think I really, really, really liked in the episode. But I think calling it an episode is kind of wrong. I don't mean that this isn't TV. I mean, it's kind of bifurcated, isn't it? There's a 40 minutes of Sutekh, Dust of Death. We get that line a lot. The whole Sutekh story. And then that ends very definitively. And then we have it's not really an epilogue, but it's like a whole
mini-sode.
It's a really significant chunk of the episode is just dealing with this family stuff, the Sunday stuff, Ruby stuff, arcs with 15 and Ruby and everything like that. That second episode, I don't love everything it does, but I think that's a pretty good episode. The first episode is the one that we'll spend longer talking about. In that second episode, there's the Ruby postlude thing. There's a scene I really, really like, and it's nice because a lot of what I don't like in this episode is the dialogue and some stuff Ncuti does with the dialogue. So it's nice. There's a scene where I think Ncuti and Davies are just working fantastically in sync and everything's working really, really well. That scene I really, really... And so much of what stunned some of us about the 60th and season 1 was Russell reconfiguring Chibnall law, adoption stuff, timeless stuff in an interesting way. And I feel like this scene was really doing that well. So it's the scene where they take the TARDIS and they've found Ruby's mother, and 15's there saying, we've found her, but it's with a time machine. Is that fair? Your mother made her choices, and I think we should leave that alone. And so the Doctor, in his wisdom, the Doctor's very old, the Doctor's very wise. This is a post-therapy Doctor, if you want to call him that. So he's saying all, these very wise things, and Ruby completely disregards what he says. And so usually that is not a great thing. The Doctor knows what he's talking about. So Ruby goes and she kind of awkwardly...
Yeah, I mean, it's a very similar setup to Father's Day, really.
100%.
Only it turns out much better.
That's and I feel like this is finally kind of thorny in a way. Russell's been didactic and simple in some of this episode and this season in a way that I don't like and doesn't really feel like his strengths. But I really like this scene because I feel like it's complex in a way he hasn't always been this year. And so the Doctor's advice is completely wrong. Ruby reunites with her mother, and you can unpack. I've seen different people from different perspectives on adoption say reasons they do or don't like how that all ends up. But basically, Ruby's happy with her mother. And then we get this great shot of Ncuti outside where he initially has, a kind of regular reaction, and then he kind of stares near the camera and he looks very shaken. And I really, 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 really like that because the Doctor's completely wrong with his advice. What he said was wrong. Ruby disregarding his advice brought her the infinitely better outcome. And that's really interesting. The Doctor being fallible is interesting there. The fact that the Doctor's experiences with Susan Susan Foreman, as this series invokes a lot, inform what he's doing there is really interesting. The fact that it all ties into what Space Babies and Church and even the 60th to an extent have talked about, his adoption experiences and all that. The fact that all configures into the advice he gave, which ended up being terrible advice for Ruby, is really interesting. Ruby rejecting the Doctor's advice and agency and being her own character is really cool. That hasn't always happened. It's nice for Ruby to get a happy ending. It's nice for 15's not unhappy with her getting a happy ending, but it's tough for him to deal with. If she'd followed his advice, she would have a worse life. And that's a really interesting thing, I think, for a character like that to have to deal with. It's not didactic and straightforward like a lot of season 1 and their dramaless arc has been together, which I really, really like. I just think the complexities of that scene are really, really cool, and I think all their acting is selling it really, really interestingly. And I just feel like it's a very human moment that you can relate to, in that in your wisdom, you've given someone advice driven from your own tough life experiences, and you're like, well, I've went through this bad stuff so they don't have to. Hopefully they take on my advice, things will be better for them. And for them to do the opposite thing and that to turn out really well for them, I think that's such an interesting, relatable moment of how do you reassess yourself in the wake of that. And I think Ncuti sold that emotion really, really, really well in that shot outside. So I just love that scene. That felt like the Russell T Davies I want running the show. I love that scene a lot.
It's like the first moment since Church on Ruby Road, really, where that stuff we were talking about back then, about how the Doctor and Ruby kind of have different approaches to this question of being a foundling, and how, the Doctor walked away from Ruby's mum, that thing that we noticed and apparently no one else did in the previous episode. That whole thing, and how it seems to represent like a different attitudes, and how we might maybe see some conflict or different like points of view on that. Obviously, we've got none of that all season until like final 10 minutes of the final episode, and it actually comes to the fore again. So it's kind of like you could skip everything between Church on Ruby Road and this sequence, like, and you get an actual completed like an emotional journey that's going somewhere.
It's true. You don't even have to watch season 1 in order, really.
No, you have to watch it at all, yeah. So, yeah, it was very nice to actually get a return to those themes, finally, at long last, after they've been, I'd say, decidedly neglected all season. And, yeah, I completely agree with everything you said there.
Something else I liked, okay, I'm not being negative. I shouldn't preface this. The lighting in the scene, the Into the Vortex scene, really nice TARDIS lighting. The bluish and the red lights, that look really nice.
Well, for other things we liked, I liked a lot of the production design. I'm apparently one of the few who likes Big Sutekh. I think he's cute. And I mean, maybe that's the wrong thing to get out of the God of Death, but well, let's be real here. All of the Egyptian gods are really cute. I mean, that's why they're still so popular today. This isn't even the only Disney Plus streaming sci-fi series that's about how cute Egyptian gods are right now.
Indeed.
And I like the memory TARDIS. I liked seeing all the goofy little things squeezed into it.
Yeah.
I like the time window. Because my suspicion, and I don't know if this is legit. My suspicion is that that's just what the volume looks like. When you don't have all the stuff hooked up, when you're just playing, random shit on it. And it's an interesting meta element to bring into a show that is now starting to experiment with that technology.
Yeah, like a self-aware televisual kind of aesthetic. Yeah, I like that a lot too.
Yeah. I like a lot of the post-apocalyptic elements of the episode too. The hell, I've already forgotten the planet's name. The Chib planet, where he meets the woman and gets the spoon.
Yeah.
And 2046 looking all spooky and desolate. I really liked that too.
Yeah, it's always fun when you go to like the Prime Minister's office and everyone's dead, like extremists.
Yeah, very extremist.
I kind of liked the PE teacher kind of aesthetic Ruby and 15 had in 2046 as well. I don't know why they got changed, but that was cool.
Yeah. At the end when they're in like fucking fatigues for some reason. I guess because it's hot in 2046, because of climate change. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe they figured, considering how they resolved the story arc with Sutekh, maybe they were figuring, look, we aren't going to want to risk anybody tripping over their goddamn jacket or something like that.
Yeah. There's a big thing I think all three of us actually would have liked this episode. I just remembered. Wasn't Bonnie Langford great?
Yeah.
Yes, she was good.
Actually getting stuff to do, and she just killed it. She's so good. She should have been in the credits, I think.
Yeah, they should have had her in Doctor Who before. She's really good.
Yeah, I think that shot where I think it was a big close up on her face as Sutekh was about to take full control of her, and her facial expressions like complete agony, like warping, loads of micro expressions. She's like doing like the full on like acting like mega showcase.
Yeah.
The video commentary she did with Russell is so funny. Their interactions are funny for a lot of reasons. At one point, she's going on about how she didn't really feel like she could be proud when she was of the show when she was on it before, and Russell's reaction's kind of funny to that. And then, when like the end credits are rolling on the episode, she's going on at length about how much this means to her, to be in the show again and for it to be good, and how this was a huge thing for her. And Russell just quietly kind of going, "It's over, Bonnie. We have to stop. The episode is finished." She's raving on. She's really funny. It's great to see her actually be able to act and have these big moments. I hope she just sticks around heaps in RTD too, because she's so good.
Yeah, I love the scene in the memory TARDIS when I thought it was a little weak that she's sort of off away from Ruby and 15 for most of it, but
yeah,
the bit that they share about we met we met Einstein, and she says, "Oh, I forgot about that."
Yeah,
it's a very melancholic scene, and she's cuddling Seven's sweater vest. adorable.
Yeah. Hey, another thing I like, I actually don't know if you guys will agree, because it's kind of people have very different opinions on this stuff. I thought the VFX, you very rarely say this with Doctor Who, I thought the VFX were quite good in the climax with the vortex and big CGI Sutekh, and then the vortex ripping past. But the thing I thought worked really well in that was how 15 and the TARDIS were incorporated. I was staring at it and going, this actually looks like they're there. This doesn't look really obviously stitched together. Like Shooty in the TARDIS and the TARDIS in the vortex, everything was actually kind of cohering. I couldn't really see the seams, which really, really, really impressed me. It actually looked like the vortex was working as a space, and 15 didn't look. It didn't look like stupid the way he was in the. It all actually looked kind of cohesive together. I was really impressed by that. It's not often the show can do a huge, very VFX heavy climax, and if everything actually look not just good, but everything looked like solidly together. That impressed me. I thought that was quite good, the way it looked.
Yeah, I like that. I even like the visual of like as Sutekh is being dragged along, his claws are tearing the
Yeah.
vortex open. Like, we can go on and on about the story logic of it, but the visual element of it it sells very easily the idea that, that whatever's happening here is fixing everything.
Isn't this so surreal that all three of us are going, yeah, the VFX were amazing. I don't know about the story, but the VFX was so good. This is Doctor Who. What has happened? What are we doing?
Yes, I thought the reverse shot of that when we see Unit Tower and the sky is ripping open behind it, that was quite pretty as well in a twinkly sort of way.
Yeah, and I like, as long as we're broaching some topics here, I'm okay with the idea that the way you conquer the dog god of death is you put a leash on him and take him for walkies. I mean, a leash, a whistle, there's an underlying logic there that I mean, when you're dealing with gods, you're already in the realm of myth and metaphor and whatever. It's also been pointed out to me that another way of looking at this is the Doctor is dragging the god of death around behind his car, which is a equally valid interpretation and quite horrible.
See, when you mentioned the leash and the whistle together, the word kink just flew into my head. I'm just wondering, is that another lens you could look at it through?
I suppose it is. I mean, I've heard some interpretations of the whole concept of the Doctor goes everywhere spreading, inadvertently spreading death. And when you throw kink into that, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe not. We can backspace that one.
We can approach that topic later, but yeah, I mean, there are things you can dig out of this episode that are quite interesting and quite dark, because death is, a very dark topic. But I don't know. I feel that Sutekh is kind of aimless I don't feel like. Well, let's continue talking about things we like. If we got anything else.
Yeah, just one more thing, something I like. I guess this kind of loops back to what we were talking about earlier with the Ruby's mum stuff. But and I guess it's not so much that I like the scene where this is brought up specifically, but I like the fact of it, which is that what we talked about there with the Doctor giving Ruby that avoidant advice, like don't interfere, don't revisit, don't like talk to her. Like that is not only like his own, I guess, like his own feelings or whatever, but it's kind of it's linked kind of retroactively with his abandonment of Susan.
Yeah.
And the fact that, so it's not just necessarily like a timeless child sort of thing. Actually, it's like the flipping that around and saying, actually, at one point, the Doctor was the one who left his family member behind for their own safety, presumably, or whatever reasons, the first Doctor had. He went on a big speech about them. So it's interesting to look at it from that perspective and kind of to do a bit of lore hacking to take this timeless child thing and make it kind of the flip side of the Susan thing. That seems like it's potentially a quite cool way to, I guess, weave those together. And it's good that the Doctor's whole, I guess what puts the Doctor on the wrong foot in that scene is actually something that is linked to his own past and the past of the show, like a real thing in the show, not like a misremembered thing of RTD's, but an actual fact. Like, yeah, he did leave Susan behind, and he has actually mostly avoided seeing her again. And that does connect to, Ruby, him, like, not wanting or not really having much faith in the idea of Ruby going back to, like, interfere in her mum's life again. So, yeah, I like that bit of connection there.
I do really. It's strange to say this, but I really like how Davies treats Chibnall's additions to the lore.
I love it. Yeah,
I like the Yeah, reframing the Timeless Child, because the Timeless Child revelation is supposed to shake us, shake the foundations of the whole lore and bring us, which should be putting us in mind of what things were like back in the first Doctor era, like how Remembrance of the Daleks has, radical implications for the lore, and it literally takes place right down the road from an unearthly child. So the problem, of course, is that Chibnall can't write that. He doesn't have it in him. Davies does, and he's coming along and fixing it, I guess. I don't know. The downside to it is that this season, and this episode in particular, they felt very Chibnall influenced, and I saw a tweet that said that this finale was a love letter to Chibnall's era of Doctor Who. And boy, ain't that the fucking truth. Because Jesus Christ, this is the worst RTD finale. I'm sorry, it is. It's worse than Last of the Time Lords. It's worse than the last episode of Years and Years.
Are we shifting away from positivity now? I think we've done all we can.
I think we probably are.
Yes, I am fully shifted away from positive. Well, I'm shifted away from positivity, but I cannot shift away from optimism. Because if we're going to be reviewing essentially a Chibnall finale done by Russell T Davies, then you're going to get Chibnall era Broken Mirrors. Which means I have to come into this with a thesis. I have to realign my mind and get back to what I was under Chibnall, which is I am an optimist and I am always disappointed. And I am very disappointed in this episode of Doctor Who, but I am optimistic about the fact that the show appears to be doomed.
Go on.
I have seen Davies say a few times recently, when he's been talking about the future of the program and about all his great plans, he has almost offhandedly mentioned, but of course they haven't commissioned us for season 3 yet. So, do you think that the BBC has it in them to do the funniest thing in the history of television? Do you think? Let me ask it another way. It's been a while since I checked on the news. Has there been any confirmation that season 3 of Doctor Who is commissioned and will be happening?
RTD's plowing on ahead as if it will be, but we haven't got an official, like Disney haven't put the money in again or BBC haven't said anything.
Yeah, I guess the question is presumably another season will get made. The question is, will it be with the same
money
production company? Will it, will Disney still be involved? Will it be the same people making it? Will this whole setup continue? Is the question.
Yeah, I think that's a very good question to be having right now. I think that's probably a question that's on the minds of a lot of people at the BBC and at Disney. Because it feels to me like over the past few years, Doctor Who has not been in a good place. Even my favorite eras of the show saw decreasing ratings, and I understand that ratings are going down across the board. But Chibnall dragged the show down into the mud. It had the brand when Russell T Davies came in. The brand was at the most unhealthy place it's been since 2003. So Davies came in thinking, I have to rescue Doctor Who, and in Davies' mind, having strong corporate ownership of Doctor Who is a very good thing because it means that lots of creative people are employed and lots of stories are told and people are entertained and educated and have a new way of expressing themselves. And that's a lovely, beautiful idea. But I feel like his investment in improving the health of the Doctor Who brand has come at the cost of absolutely sapping season 1 of the quality it should have. Season 1 needed to be as good as series 1 in 2005 was.
Yeah.
If he's going to arrest the fall of this whole franchise, this brand, this story that we've been following, it needed to not just win back the crowd, it needed to win new crowds. It needed to win new fans. It needed to drag in people from all across the world and all across the spectrum. And that's, of course, why he puts it on Disney Plus, which is one of the biggest streaming platforms pushed by one of the most powerful companies in the world, and Doctor Who is a worldwide recognized brand. It should be going well. He's mentioned a few times he's compared it to Marvel and Star Trek. But in terms of like longevity and reach, he's really saying that this should be as big as Star Wars. This should be something that everybody in the world has as like a cultural touchstone. And the downside is season 1 is not that good. Season 1 it has certainly good episodes in it. It has many more good episodes than the entire Chibnall era. Some of them even written by Russell T Davies. But his focus on trying to, let me put it like this. I don't know how much Series 2 in 2006 was affected by the production of Torchwood and Totally Doctor Who and all of those other hangers-on back then. But Series 1 was the only thing Davies seemed to be focused on at the time. He wasn't worried about running Torchwood. He wasn't worried about running the Sarah Jane Adventures. He was able to give Series 1 his full and undivided attention. And I do not feel that he's given Season 1 his full and undivided attention. I feel like between Tales of the TARDIS, he's got fucking War Between the Land and the Sea coming, the most unwieldy title in the history of Doctor Who. He's got all of these plates spinning that I feel are dragging his attention away from the core storytelling of Doctor Who. And I think that has dealt a serious, perhaps even mortal wound. And that's about the size of my thesis. So what are your thoughts? How'd you feel about the episode?
Well, your point of view is that RTD's been kind of distracted by having too many plates to spin. I'm kind of the opinion that maybe actually he's just decided he doesn't have to give a shit anymore.
Yeah.
Like, at least to that extent, the extent that he did, like, you know, it's like 2005 or whatever. Because it feels like he's been talking up so much, just like, oh, this crazy new Doctor Who, it's so wild and free. And, you know, in practice, you know, how has that turned out? These episodes that often feel really, I mean, like this one. It's interesting. We compared this to a Chibnall finale, right? And the thing about a Chibnall finale, that it's not just like it's bad, therefore it is like Chibnall. There are actual specific, I guess, Chib-esque qualities to it. Like that spoon scene, you know, where we go to like, you know, desolate, empty world. That felt like it could be from Survivors of the Flux or like Ascension of the Cybermen. Like those moments, there was this really weird, this feeling of emptiness to it. Even when we go to that, you know, empty 2046 future, that's fun and everything, but like that feeling of just like there's no one here. This is just this tiny little thing with just like, you know, 2 or 3 people wandering around this empty, you know, universe. That's kind of a feeling that came back so often during Chib. And I guess also like some of these instincts, like hey, let's have everyone at UNIT fire loads of guns at the monster of the week. You know, that's Power of the Doctor with Tegan and Ace. And then at the climax, like the whole thing of where the Doctor's giving ridiculous empty speeches about his own morality rather than anything really emotional happening. That also feels kind of Chib-coded. And I guess even like the whole, I mean, you know, Swarm and Azure and their whole like fake moral debate with the Doctor in Flux. I felt echoes of that with the whole life versus death shit in this story.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not just badness, like in the sense of ineptness, but I guess like an actual sense that the writer doesn't feel they need to actually dig very deep into anything at all. Or, like we're just doing, you know, bread and circuses for the Doctor Who masses. And like the first 40 minutes of this episode feel like that intensely to me. Like the Sutekh stuff is really just a runaround for the sake of having a runaround. And that's why it's so shallow. You know, shallowness is the word.
Yeah.
I feel we're saying the same thing, which is that at least for us, this season didn't really work, or this didn't feel like Davis at the top of his game. I like that, Mirrors, you kind of have the charitable view that he could have done better, but he was distracted or so-and-so wasn't working. And Gig, you're kind of saying he could have done better, but he didn't want to. He didn't even try to. He was coasting. Yeah,
kind of like the sense that, I mean, some belief maybe has like taken hold in him that like, well, we're in this new era and you can just fucking do any old shit as long as you make it wacky. Like this idea that Doctor Who is so established, you can just pander and just like fuck around.
Yeah, that even though he's calling it season 1, it is really series 14, and he can just, I mean, people have been watching it for 13 seasons and I even stuck around for the last few, which were utter shit. So really, how much effort do I have to put in? The other possibility, the one that I'm also concerned about, and I'm wondering if maybe it's what you're about to broach, Neo, is I wonder if he just doesn't have, I'm not going to say he doesn't have it in him anymore, but I wonder if he doesn't have anything to say through the medium of Doctor Who at this point. If he's run out of topics, essentially, that he feels are suitable for Doctor Who, and that he can bring to the audience through that medium.
Actually, you kind of did this before. There's a very fan brain way to look at that, which you kind of invoked a few minutes ago. 2005, Russell was bringing some. Well, actually, 2003 is when Russell got the show again, cancelling out the Schalke Doctor, which we talked about with Rogue. What a shame. What a shame.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace.
Rest in power, King.
Well, now he's back. What's that? Died 2003, reborn 2024. Welcome back.
Yeah.
When he came back in 2003, he was bursting with, remember like in the 90s, that Doctor Who magazine where everyone was like saying their pitch, I would do it this way and I would do it this way. I would do a gothic version. I would do it this version. You know, all these would-be showrunners throwing their ideas around. And of course, two of them eventually got the show for themselves. One of the things Russell was saying back in his old pitch documents was about how he needed to kind of junk a lot of the Doctor mythology, and because it's flotsam, you know, it's not relevant to reinventing the character, you know. I actually wanted new audiences. He didn't just want the old audience that, you know, is kind of static. There's always going to be a certain amount of people watching Doctor Who. He wanted to get new audiences, kid audiences, and everyone coming into the show. So part of his 2003 pitch for what became Series 1 was junking a lot of, you know, the Time Lord stuff, the continuity stuff, and really reorienting stuff on the companion. He was very specific that everything had to be seen through Rose's point of view, and that Rose is really the main character of the show, and that so the Doctor mythology, whether it's his new mythology, Last of the Time Lords, or whether the regular stuff, that's all through the prism of Rose. He was so laser focused on everything from a very character perspective, that character being Rose, everything, it had percolated in his mind forever, I guess, basically. Although, I guess, like he says, the Sutekh thing had been percolating forever, and that didn't do it any favors. Anyway.
There's another way of looking at that, which is that he's had the Sutekh idea for all this time. Never thought, well, we should try Sutekh. It's always been a less useful idea than, what's the most damning comparison I can make?
What, the Tritivores from Planet of the Dead, maybe?
Yeah. It's always been less useful than bug people on Sand Planet.
So Series 1, the 2005 one, worked brilliantly. And I think this is oversimplifying it, but I think part of that is, you know how like often a band, their first album it's not like the first album is like 2 years of work. It's like the first album is all the work that the band's done up to that point. It's not just that they've written 10 songs and that's enough for an album. It's that they've cultivated, you know, for years they've been, you know, audiences don't like these songs as much. Let's do a new one. Let's combine these two songs together with the best bits of both. They've kind of cultivated a perfect set of 10 songs.
It's first novel syndrome.
Yeah, exactly. Then the second album comes and it's like, well, we got a year or two to do this. It's not like they get 2-4 years, cultivate a new set of songs and go, we're going to throw those ones away. We're going to throw those ones away. We're going to combine those. It's often more like, well, we got so long to do it. These are just the second set of songs. It's not that this is the set of songs we've also spent years, you know, refining. It's that this is just the next ones we've written. I really get that feel with the first David Tennant season, where a lot of it feels like this is just the stuff we're doing now, rather than this is the stuff that we've thought about for ages and we've really, you know, refined in all sorts of ways. The thing, this is called Season 1, but to me, the 60th felt like the Series 1 analog there. The 60th felt like RTD had been brewing for a while, and he'd been, you know, there was a very post-Moffat vibe to some of it, the way he revisited some of the Donna things. I feel like the Giggle was actually saying new things about the character. I felt like the 60th was a new RTD in some ways, and I thought that worked really well, and it felt like he dwelled, whether he had or hadn't, it felt like he dwelled on some of those things for a while before bringing them to the show. And then this could be totally off base. This could be completely the inverse of what happened. But to me, it felt like this Season 1 was just like the next set of episodes. You know, we've got 2 that have kind of come about because Shudi's still doing sex education. And those 2 I thought turned out pretty good. But it's very, this is just what we're doing now. Space Babies being kind of the first episode continues to just bewilder. How can that be what you... I've even come around on the episode a bit. I actually think it doesn't look too bad now the season's done, because at least it has a story and it has themes and it all kind of coheres, and this bit connects to that bit. It all kind of coheres as a story. But how can that be the first? Like if you're calling it Season 1 and you're trying to cultivate a new audience, how can that
how can you be burning off excess audience when you haven't even picked up on an audience? How can you put the kenotax first? You know. How can you be audience hostile before you...
You need the audience to be hostile too.
So RTD2 is the Series 2 of Eras?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like Church, I think Church is a good episode, but it's a Christmas episode. There's elements in it. I think that's. I don't want to overthink the new fans won't understand because I don't think that like he's drenched it in too much continuity or anything. I just don't think he made it good enough this year.
It's not inviting. Yeah.
I think it's too simple to go, you can't have classic things in and that's going to, the new Disney audiences won't watch because Sutekh. I don't think that's true at all. I think a lot of them probably even like Sutekh. I just think it's not good enough this year, the way that I think 2005 was good enough. And I'm confused why it just feels, it's not, I think it's a distraction to say it's too lore-y or it's too continuity laden. I don't think that's the case at all. I don't think that matters at all, whether it's Series 11-esque without lore or whether it has loads of lore. I don't actually think that matters. I think it just matters whether it's good and engaging. And I don't think it's good and engaging because what were Ruby and 15's arc for the season? What was their story? How much of it was there? Isn't that what Russ was good at? Where were the characters?
Yeah.
Like Mirrors, like a minute ago, you kind of suggested that maybe Neo was going to say RTD has nothing to say through Doctor Who anymore, and it struck me that like one of our favourite episodes in the season is the one where the Doctor's not in it, and it basically stops being an episode of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, what's going on here?
Okay, I mean, Davies is a really creative guy, and he's made lots of good television. He's made lots and lots of good starts to television shows. So it's clear that he has lots of things to say, and I'm sure he still has plenty of interesting things to say, even in the realm of science fiction, because he seems to love it quite a bit. But I don't know if he's got Doctor Who in particular left in him. Not only is he, I mean, you could even extend that to the fact that he's trying to push the idea of Doctor Who as being more fantasy and supernatural and horror tinged than it has been for the past few years, which I always thought, well, I mean, it's always kind of been fantasy. And his point is that what he said is that you don't have to couch it in sci-fi terms anymore. But what he really means is that he wants to bring in more fantasy and supernatural and horror storytelling. Not so much the furniture, It's not so much that they're goblins, it's that they're goblins who operate in a storybook goblin sort of way. It's not so much that Ruby is cursed by a figure that's always separate distance from her. It's that she's trapped in a story that follows the logic of a nightmare or of folk horror. And it's not so much that he's bringing Sutekh back and calling him a god, because that's what he called himself back in the old days. So he's bringing in a figure which represents a god of death and is trying to tell a story that follows the beats of those old ancient myths of facing the god of this, that, or the other. So it seems like Davies is, I'm not going to say tired of Doctor Who. It seems more that he feels like he's running out of things to say through the medium of a Doctor Who story. And what an excellent person to bring back to restore faith in the program.
See, in the midst of all of that, because you describe him kind of straining at the edges, broaching like the supernatural, different types of storytelling and archetypes and stuff. But in the midst of all of that, just as Neo, you were saying a minute ago, what are 15 and Ruby's roles in all of this? Because like I mentioned, 73 Yards, that's the best episode, and the Doctor and Ruby relationship is not really in it. That whole idea of them going on a mutual journey is absent from that episode, and it's not really in Dot and Bubble either, the other one, and it's kind of not really in much of the season at all, save that one bit in Moff's episode, where they have that cool heart-to-heart moment, or in Rogue for a few moments, like at the end. And certainly in this finale, it feels like absent, like maybe the final few minutes. It really just feels like the part that is meant to be the core, I guess, of the good version of Doctor Who as revived in 2005 and mostly as continued through to 2017 or thereabouts, is having that character-driven core at the centre of it. So you actually have this emotional journey with the characters, no matter what you do around them, as long as you have them clear, realised, and cathartic in the middle of it all, feeling things and actually like growing and changing, having conflicts and all of that, then you can basically get away with whatever. And in a way, this finale feels, I guess, like the culmination of that, because if you look at past finales, and what is the beat that resolves it in every instance? Like, 9 sacrifices himself for Rose with a kiss. He takes on her, radiation poisoning and shit. He dies. Rose chooses to stay in this universe and fight with 10, and she loses him as a result. She gets stuck in the other universe. They can never see each other again. Martha walks the entire Earth for a year. She gives so much of herself for the Doctor and realizes, like, I'm better than this. I can leave him, right? Series 4, Donna, she transforms, but at the cost of everything. She loses everything. It's so, it's huge. Of course, you don't even need to go into Moffat and stuff, right? But, the pivotal point of all these finales is that there is a huge, emotional thing or cost or something about their relationship. Like, there's something weighty there. It has weight, right? What is the resolving beat in this story, Empire of Death? Okay, the Doctor and Ruby, they prank Sutekh in a manner that they could do in basically any episode ever. It's not really very specific to this one, to be honest. And then the Doctor, rants to himself about, his own, self-righteous, self-perceptions for a bit, and then it's over, and we just everything is fixed at that point. Right, so there is no emotional climax to this episode in the manner that actually has value for both of their characters and their relationship. All of that is cordoned off to the last 5 minutes, and it's completely unrelated to the main Sutekh storyline. So that is why this feels so empty. And the thing is, that story of 15 Ruby has nowhere to go because it hasn't been going anywhere. So this finale is kind of a consequence of the whole season going up to this point.
I've seen some fans saying this, that, actually it's okay to have a bit more of a static story for a season. It's okay for two characters to have less friction. It's actually really nice for two characters to just get on and for there to be no drama. No, it's not. That's not actually okay. It's not okay for TV to be boring and static and nothing to be happening. I don't think that's okay.
I think it's okay for two characters to get on, but there's still going to be drama.
Yeah.
You can still have shit happen to them, and it doesn't. Like, the things that happen in this series have either been tiny little bits that we get to treasure forever, like Rogue, or they just simply unhappen or are completely forgotten about. Ruby died twice this series, and it has had no impact on her, on 15, on anything. She died twice. I mean, she's up there with Clara by now.
Well, that's dying and Clara. Do you remember how electric it was when Ruby kind of fought the Doctor in Boom and she was like, no, I'm going to do this. And he was like, I don't want you to do this.
Yeah.
And both actors were singing because they had material to play, sparking off each other. Didn't that feel good? And wasn't that engaging?
Yes.
And then for the rest of the season, it's mostly been they get on and people are telling me this is fine. And that's fine in a book. That's fine on Big Finish. Yes, that's fine to just have comfy adventures because that's low stakes and we're already bought in as an audience. I don't think it's fine for two characters to not be... They don't have to hate each other. I'm not saying we need a Turlo thing. Rose and the Doctor loved each other, maybe too much. Most companions and the Doctors love each other. Bill and 12 loved each other, all that. But they don't just smile at each other all the time and never... They spark off each other. There's got to be some... It doesn't need to be... I'm not saying uncomfy or, conflicts where we can't watch it if we're in a bad mood. They need to be people, and people need to not be the same. They need to spark. That's why the scene I praised at the start was when no one was angry at each other. 15 wasn't angry at Ruby. 15 gave her advice. She disregarded the advice. They weren't angry at each other. I'm not saying we need angry vibes, and I'm not saying we need a, terrible Tegan-esque, Doctor. I'm not saying that, but they need to be people. There has to be something there.
They need to have drama.
There's no drama. How do we have a Russell T Davies series without drama? It's just insane. We talk about character arcs, and, at the end of this episode, it's like a farce. The Doctor says, because you changed me. I talk about family in a way I never did before. That's because of you. You've made my life bigger and better. I'm not even getting into why that dialogue is crap in terms of dialogue, but why? Because she's adopted and because they talked about Susan Foreman twice in the year. What has changed his life, so much there? What's the arc? It's barely been in the season. That's why we were praising this episode finally doing something with it again at the end. What is the big character arc? Look at 2005. Every single episode did something with Rose and Nine's characters with their story there. Series 8, Series 9, how much those were doing with the characters. Series 5, it's something even Series 4, it's something the show is very good at, including Russell. Why? They didn't do anything this season. They didn't evolve together. I don't think 15 learnt to talk about family in a new way from Ruby. Where is this coming from? What was the arc?
Very funny detail there. You know, I mean, what was the first moment that 15 started talking differently about family? It was like third act of Church on Ruby Road. So he'd known Ruby for like, 10 minutes? Obviously he'd been like stalking her before that point, but like they hadn't been talking very long at all. But at the end of that episode, near the end, like halfway through, like 2/3 of the way through, he suddenly blurts out, "I'm adopted." And we thought that was a really cool moment, right? That was a pretty sick moment. And that was like the first sign that actually he was different. But it was not Ruby doing that to him. Like, no, we assumed it was a whole like bi-generated thing or timeless thing.
And he hasn't done it since then.
Yeah, he hasn't, basically. Really. I mean, yeah, you know, he brought up Susan Foreman a couple of times, but it's just like, what? It's just...
Devil's Cord. And then like the finale, the two-parter. Unless I'm misremembering something in Rogue, which I'm not, or 73 Yards, which I'm definitely not.
The awful thing, where it gets really ugly, I think, is it's not just that it's a crap nun character arc, it's that I think it's actually a regression, if anything. Because Church Ruby Road, we get the maybe I'm the bad luck thing. And then this episode is whole kind of configured around, I know this is astonishing, and I know this is the most incredible symbolic storytelling ever told. Sutekh represents death. The dialogue is very subtle about this, but you might be able to, if you've been online enough and you have your media literacy card, you might be able to puzzle out that Sutekh represents death. And so, I'm the doctor and I'm angsty that I cause death and play. This is crap. Isn't this what we cast off with? I thought this was the idea of the bi-generation, is that we've got all the angst that we've been drenched in for like 15 years, and we're kind of divesting it a little into David Tennant, and I thought that was a fantastic idea.
No. It turns out that it means we can just do it all over again.
Let's do the exact same thing again. Let's do the exact same angst.
Yes.
Even if it was a regular regeneration, what's the point? You've got a great new actor in, you've got a new character, and then we just give them all the same. Russell, you've literally done this before at length. The angst of, I bring death and isn't it so I make things worse. No, Doctor, you don't. I think you're great. I'm Kate Stewart and you're great, Doctor. No, I make things bad. No, you're really good, Doctor. Look, it's just crap.
I kind of have to intervene here because you're saying he's doing the exact same thing again. I'm saying, like I said before, no, he's doing it worse, right? Because this shit about the Doctor fearing he brings death in this story, and it's been talked up so much. The Doctor's going to struggle, and this story does not actually engage with the idea that the Doctor brings death with him wherever he goes. That idea has been brought up in Doctor Who before, and that idea actually means something. Okay, it doesn't just mean that the Doctor lands his box somewhere and people die. No. What it means is that he is drawn to violent situations. He provokes change that leads to violent chain reactions. It's because of how he behaves once he gets out of the TARDIS and goes on adventures that it is said that he causes death. And also, it's not necessarily true. It's not strictly true. It's a biased inference. Some places he goes, nobody dies, right? Sometimes he just has like harmless filler adventures, nothing fucking happens, right? So it is like, it's a point of view on his adventures and on his style of behavior specifically, on his approach to solving conflicts. It is not like, So doing like a metaphor for that's just, he landed the TARDIS in loads of places and everywhere he landed it, everyone died and just spread like a death gas that it, made everyone die. I blame myself. Like, you have not actually engaged with the point of that idea that you're invoking, this idea that the Doctor brings death. You haven't actually responded to it in any way, and like the ultimate like resolution of it does not actually engage with it in any way. So it's just like it's just So we're doing the shit version basically. We're doing the paper thin version where it just feels like we're doing this. It's like a writer writes down notes about things I want to like explore in this story. Like, the Doctor talks about family in a way he's never done before. Or the Doctor represents life. The Doctor's worried he brings death everywhere, and we just have the characters say those things instead of actually writing a story that literally explores them in any meaningful way. I just a hypothetical here. Suppose, right, that the Doctor learned that every place he'd ever landed the TARDIS, one person had died. Right? So the cost of every TARDIS materialization, somewhere in the universe, someone drops dead. And he learnt that and there was no apocalypse, just like, oh shit, you actually killed people. How much more weighty would that be, do you think, than like, oh my god, the whole universe is dead, let's reset it by the end of the episode? I just feel like there are just so many more ways in which you can make this idea of like death and life actually mean something. But here it is really just a crap device to do your generic TV apocalypse and then reset it by the end of the story.
Yeah.
It's the shallowest version imaginable. So, we aren't rehashing classic New Who beats. We are doing a parody of them, a shallow, pathetic parody of them.
Yeah. I mean, I've been reading a lot of fan talk about this episode, and every so often you see some new theory crop up that or some new interpretation. It's like people think that there's a magic pair of glasses somewhere, and when you watch the episode through those glasses, suddenly it's very good.
Well said.
That's not the case. That's not the case.
I mean, yeah, that felt like Chip Who discourse a lot of the time. That reminds me of Chip Who discourse.
Yeah, it's people who do have media literacy, but they're just spinning their wheels, man. There's nothing to grab onto. Like investing Sutekh with significance for a second. What exactly the fucking point is? What is the point of Sutekh, the god of death, being in this episode?
Fuck knows.
Beyond just, satisfying a childhood fantasy of Russell T Davies, which he already gets to satisfy his childhood fantasies every fucking week. He's in charge of Doctor Who. That's everybody's childhood fantasy, is to be in charge of the show they liked when they were a kid. So, what exactly is the significance of Sutekh in terms of Doctor Who mythology, in terms of Egyptian mythology? What is he representing, and does it matter? He seems to be indiscriminate. So is it climate death? Is it HIV? Is it fucking simple inevitability? Because none of that engages at all with the resolution of the program, of the Sutekh storyline. None of it engages with the Doctor dragging a dog behind his car.
And of course, he doesn't really have anything to do with the whole Ruby's mum shit either. It feels interchangeable in that respect.
Yeah.
There's a kind of rhetorical trick. I don't actually think a lot of them are doing this malevolently or anything, but I feel like the function in the discourse is a rhetorical trick where people who really like Sutekh in the episode kind of, it's like if you dislike how Sutekh is used or Sutekh used in the episode, the response to that is kind of, but don't you get it? He's symbolic. He represents death. Like he's a black dog that represents death. I'm very smart. I've learnt what subtext is. He represents death. So that's great. And then it's like the implication is there that then that's good storytelling because black dogs represent death and the episode is dialogue that the Doctor's like, I bring death, that's bad. And so we have a good story because
he undoes it.
There's a thing in the story.
There's a rope.
So he symbolizes a thing. It's like I think it's a very depressing view of storytelling that like if there's symbolism in a story, it's good. Like what is that? That's like that is the what have you been watching that this feels like the what have you been watching that this feels like the opposite that's good? Like what slop have you been consuming that for the slightest sense of subtext to like wow you away? And this is incredible storytelling because there's a black dog and that represents death and a character talks about death and now we have a good story. That makes me depressed. I think that is an absolutely awful. Is this what you're satisfied with? That there's a symbolic thing and that doesn't make it good. And it's like the implication is that if you dislike how death is used in the episode, you don't understand that black dogs represent death. Everyone gets that. That's not what whether you get that or not. How does that make anything that's happening here good? The dialogue is so bad that we're getting. Do you know that Futurama thing with the devil? I think it was the original finale of the show where he says something like, "You can't have characters announce how they feel. That makes me angry." That's what Russell was doing all this episode. That I talk about family in a different way. We invest things with significance. I'm bringing death to death. Like, if people are like patting themselves in the back for recognizing the subtext, what subtext? This is like the least subtextual episode of the entire show. I'm including Classic Who in that. Everyone is announcing what they feel and what they're doing the whole time. Why you don't get to reward yourself for going black dog death in the episode where the Doctor just basically looks to the camera and tells you what's happening the whole time? It's ridiculous. How?
I mean, it's worse than announcing what they feel. They're announcing what the writer wants them to represent in the script. Like the Doctor's like, I must represent life. Yeah, so it really is that sense of like, okay, the writer has a little thesis and they're going to put it in the character's mouth instead of actually expressing that thesis through like things that make sense. You know, we've got an intelligent rope so the Doctor can say he represents life.
I want people to want more. Like how the Doctor kills death. That's so deep because I've had people die in my life and I wish that wouldn't have happened. That's everyone's story ever. How is this? You guys don't get it. This is a really meaningful story because he represents death and death's bad. And then the Doctor stops death and that's good. Like what? This is 3-year-old shit. This is Teletubbies. We're dealing, yes, death is bad. Yes, it would be nice if some of our family members hadn't died. That's right. Little pat on the head. Very good.
I say bringing death to death is actually like, I really, really despise. I just want to give special attention to that concept of bringing death to death. Like if you repeat the Sutekh death, then that turns into undeath. Because I feel like just even as symbolism, I think there's something really shitty about this. Like, I just got to ask, like, what do people think death and life are? Like, what relationship do they have? I think this is a question people ought to ask themselves, right? Because life and death, they aren't just words. You know, they aren't like numbers like +1 and -1. These are two things that are interwoven. I think it's actually dangerous to think of them any differently. Like, death is when life exhausts its reserves, right? When you add death to death, like it's more death. You know, death is not actually like a it's I think it feels really empty, and it's treating death and life as like just empty words, and I think that's a sad thing.
As fantasy elements. It's what it's treating. It's treating them as like elemental damage. You know, death, life,
casts death, casts life.
They're it's treating them as logical variables in a logical system. Like there's a game to it. Like that's where I was coming from. Elemental damage, but like, and to use Sutekh of all people, I keep coming back to this because I've been thinking about it, which is that Egyptian mythology is so obsessed with death. They have so many different death gods because the Egyptians, they spent all of their, formative years as a culture in the fucking desert with seasonal flooding. They have so much knowledge of the intimacy and immediacy and permanency of death. And as a consequence, they have so many different gods, avatars, manifestations, whatever you want to call them, of all the different things that death represents to them, of like the victorious dead, the forgotten dead, the vengeful dead. So what exactly is the significance of Sutekh, other than he's the one that they picked in the 1970s for an episode? What kind of death is being killed by more death here? What's the point? What is the point of this? What is the symbolism a symbol for? Because death is not just a word. Death is not just one kind of death. Death is a myriad of things. There are a billion ways to die and a billion different things that death represents. And Sutekh is just he's the Thanos snap is really all he is.
I agree so much.
That's all he's here for. He's only here to have an interesting visual effect to everybody dying this time, and I don't think that that's suitable for Davies' talents.
You're hitting on something I agree so strongly with there, where you're pointing out so we have there's this hypothetical audience that are media illiterate. If you want, I'm not part of this discourse, so I don't say the media literacy thing. I'm being mocking when I say it. But there's the people who do say media literacy, they're kind of putting themselves in opposition to this theoretical audience who don't have media literacy and they don't understand what flashbacks are and they don't understand what metaphor is. And so the idea of a black dog connecting to death would be crazy to them. That would be new to them. So there's that hypothetical audience there. How extant they are is up to your belief. Then there's this media literate audience who understand black dog can represent death. I read that Egyptology book as a kid. I understand these things. Then in this audience, placing himself in opposition, they often do this thing where like, if you didn't like 73 yards, you just didn't get it, stupid. The woman represented Ruby's fear of abandonment.
Well, that's true. That's true. If you didn't like it, you are stupid. But keep going.
What I hate about this media literate audience is they act like they're expanding things, and they act like they've mined the gold out of storytelling. They've acted like they've fixed it, or they've made it beautiful, and they've done the thing by treating it like a puzzle. And I despise this approach to storytelling because they're not really talking about subtext and symbolism and metaphor the way they talk about. They're really talking about analogy, or allegory is a better way to put it. They're treating it like a mathematical equation. Woman in yards equals abandonment. Sutekh equals death. They're treating everything as if it's like the story is a code for something else. It's like the television is a different language and they've translated it into English, and now they've understood it. They can share that understanding with others online, and that's what TV is. That's what storytelling is that something represents something else, and that's the extent of storytelling. And I think that's disgusting and so boring. I wouldn't be into art at all if that was the approach that everyone used. I think it's absolutely gross.
Reminds me of what David Dan said about meaning is for, what is it? Meaning is for report.
Themes are for 8th grade book reports. Yeah. Game of Thrones. But the thing is, the woman at 73 yards doesn't need to represent abandonment. And Russell hasn't even he hasn't declared as a dictator to everyone, she's abandonment. And if you don't get that, you're media illiterate and you don't understand my episode. We invest things with significance ourselves. You know, we read episodes in different ways and we talk about them in different ways. It's not a puzzle to solve. And the way they're talking is like, if you solve the puzzle, that's inherently good. And that's what makes you good as an audience member. And that's what makes the episode good as a unit of storytelling, is when the puzzle is solved. Sutekh equals death. Therefore, I'm smart as a media literate audience member. And therefore, episode's smart because it's shrouded a meaning in something, in an allegory. But I find this like a yawning chasm of despair to treat things that way. Am I making any sense at all to you guys how the equation approach to storytelling is just gross to me, and it's like a self-aggrandizing thing. You're not really talking about anything then you're just like solving it as if something equals X equals Y, and that's not a conversation. That's just treating everything like allegory, which is the most boring approach to storytelling ever. I think that's the Animal Farm approach to storytelling, where there's not really a story, there's a grievance, and you express that grievance in code, and the code is the literary feature or whatever, and that's the story. That's just depressing crap to me. No one's talking then. You're just translating.
I don't think it's inherently bad, but I think it's incredibly reductive to approach every story that way, and to only be able to engage with stories that way. And I see what's going on, though, is that for them, because the episode obviously has no pleasures on its own, aside from, the 8 of them that we listed at the start. What's going on is the pleasure they're getting from the episode is the jolt of, ooh, I'm so clever, when they finally solve the puzzle. When they finally build the glasses through which the episode is good. And that's fine I can't complain about people thinking too much about Doctor Who. Look at what we're doing.
What you pointed out, though, was that you're saying it's all very well and good. Sutekh equals death, Black Dog equals death. Great. What do you mean by that?
Yeah.
You're asking the question afterwards, which isn't just, okay, we've got allegory. I understand a thing can mean something else, but what is the actual meaning? That's just a translation. That's a hieroglyph can equal a concept, in the brain. A word can have a meaning. This is semiotics. What's the actual storytelling then? What's beyond what a sign means? What's the story? Like, what sort of death does Sutekh represent? What is the episode saying about death? All the Davies stuff I can find about Sutekh in the episode is he talks a lot about, in the commentary and on Unleashed, about, well, when I was a kid, I thought Sutekh could just hide out on the TARDIS. And so that's been in my brain forever, and I wanted to do that story. On the YouTube behind the scenes, he talks about, well, Sutekh wasn't a god of death in Classic Who. He was like an alien. And so the years in the time vortex and, the arrival into the universe of the Pantheon have evolved him to become like a real god. And so that's all just like lore-y stuff, though. That's like, I wanted him to be alive because it didn't make sense to me the way I misunderstood what a time corridor is in the 70s. But there's nothing really, he's not saying in the behind the scenes anything interesting about Sutekh or death. And then the episode isn't either. And so I really reject this idea that because there's an allegory, there's something with depth here. I want to know, what is the depth? All I can, and I've read as many Twitter threads and Tumblr things that I can find on this, and all I can really find is this self-congratulation of Black Dog death, and death is bad.
See, all this stuff is playing in the margins, right? All the allegory shit, semiotic shit. It kind of frees the interpreter from having to actually look at what substance there is in the episode. And Sutekh is the perfect example of that, because as a character in this story, Sutekh vanishes. It's so ironic because in his original appearance, Pyramids of Mars, he is such a character. He is such a Robert Holmesian kind of like frustrated villain kind of character. He's very memorable. He has loads of delicious dialogue. He talks to the Doctor at length. It's really cool. And in this story, he barely fucking says anything. And I think really the moment he disappears...
Find the mother's name.
Yeah, the moment he disappears in this story is when he doesn't kill 15 and Ruby in front of the TARDIS when he has the perfect opportunity to. Because at the moment he's just like, arr, arr, arr. He can't even say anything. Like, the Doctor's like smugging away to him like, hey, Suit. And Sutek's just like wordless. He doesn't even say anything. And of course, from that point onwards, Sutekh just becomes a device to give Ruby's mum more importance, because Sutekh really, really cares about the secret of the time-shrouded secret of Ruby's mum for some reason. Like, it's not really clear what the fuck that has to do with any of his motivations or characterization, like, anywhere, really. Like, why, if he's killed everyone in the fucking universe at every conceivable point in history, what possible threat?
Including her.
Including her, presumably. Like, why is it suddenly knowledge he seeks rather than death? Ultimately, because he's so craving knowledge in the story, and it's just like, this could be any character, this could be any evil god, like, it doesn't matter that it's Sutekh, right? That's the thing. So there is no substance to this character. We have taken away all the substance, all the cool dialogue, all the meat, anything, all the stuff that you could actually use to explore these themes of death, or Egyptian gods, or whatever you want to do. You could do that with dialogue and writing, and none of that is there. So you've just got, all you're left with is playing in the margins and all this really kind of shitty, shallow, like, interpretation gaming with stuff, and very little to actually talk about. And before we move on, like, I just want to, sometimes I feel a bit personally implicated in all this stuff, because I wrote that whole wanky thing about Hellbent. Oh, dude, Hellbent is totally about, like, it's about, like, making fun of people who think the Doctor should have lore and stuff, and it's about TARDIS Wiki and stuff, and, like, that is so, like, implicated in all this fan wank shit that we like to talk about. Like, when people say Sutekh represents toxic fandom, guys, because he wanted to know the secret of Ruby's mum, just like you idiots. I hate that shit. But the thing is, like, when I was talking about Hellbent, like, the point of that story is Clara and the Doctor, their relationship is actually a big thing. It matters. It has substance. There is a real story underneath all the fucking around. And that's what's missing. There has to be that real core to it. Otherwise, like, nothing else matters.
Yeah.
There's so much to go from there.
Yeah, I know.
I want to revisit that nostalgia thing in a sec. The fanfic, I think there's two fanficky things I want to say. The first is, I think, Sutekh, it's very infantile how Sutekh is used in this episode. And I think this is very relatable, but I think it's just reflecting, well, I don't think it's just this, but I think a lot of it is reflecting Russell's childhood experience of the Great Pyramids of Mars story. There's a fanfic thing where a lot of fanfic or fan videos or whatever will reuse dialogue from episodes, but in strange ways that implies they didn't quite comprehend the dialogue the way it may have been intended. This episode is I Bring Sutekh's Dust of Death, repeated a lot of times, which is a riff on I Bring Sutekh's Gift of Death from Pyramids of Mars. Scarman, so like a side character, says that in Pyramids of Mars. Sutekh doesn't refer to himself in the third person. It's like a specific line with specific meaning in the original Pyramids of Mars. And it's very iconic. And I think it's used in Queer as Folk for a character watching Pyramids of Mars on TV, Russell's show from the 2000s. But that was like a specific line Sutekh didn't say. Scarman said, as like a servant to Sutekh, I bring Sutekh's gift of death. And then he brought the gift of death to someone, Ibrahim. That's not like a catchphrase of Sutekh. It's like a thing that a servant of Sutekh says in Pyramids of Mars. And then in this new story, everyone's saying I bring Sutekh's dust of death and then blowing dust around, which I this must be a riff on Avengers, I assume, like, because the Avengers, the Snap, the Infinity War Endgame, because Russ was very engaged with all that stuff. That feels like a fanficky thing to me, that I feel like the line is being reappropriated in a strange kind of weightless way. The other fanficky thing, I know, Gig, you've talked about this before. I bring life, death to death. Can you unpack that at all? How does that remind you of fanfic?
Okay, well, the fanficky thing about the whole scene, it was actually a bit later, and it's maybe the worst bit, which we haven't even talked about at all. It's after he's done the whole, I bring life, yes, I've brought death to death. It's when he's hugging Ruby, and suddenly he's like, and now I must become the monster. And he goes to the doors of the TARDIS and starts shouting, Sutekh, God of Death, you win. This is your greatest victory because you have turned me into a killer. Oh, I'm meant to represent life and now you've made me bring death. Now I am the bringer of death and I'm just as bad as you now. Kills you, bye. Right? That shit is so unspeakably, just unhingedly, horrendously awful. And the thing about all of that, and you mentioned fanficky stuff, it does remind me quite powerfully of some of the like YouTube fan films and stuff that I've watched, often made by like young adults, teenagers, because I think what it is there there is so much bluster around that. The Doctor giving this like tortured confession that he has been corrupted and his morality, his pureness has been tainted. And he is killing. He is But the thing about this is that there are no actual emotional consequences to 15 killing Sutekh, because there can't be. Because at the start of this episode, he refers to Pyramids of Mars. He says, "I sent you forward to your own death." What is that if not killing Sutekh? Exactly. He's literally he killed Sutekh before, right? Arguably he did it in a way that was worse last time. He imprisoned Sutekh in that fucking time corridor to age to death. That's pretty brutal, So the Doctor kills things all the time. Right? Yeah. So this thing, it's not a meaningfully new act for the Doctor to, snap that rope and kill Sutekh and drop Sutekh in death and blah, blah, blah. But the thing is, it's pretending to transgress the Doctor's moral code. It's pretending to have consequences. It's pretending that this is this huge deal that has, plunged the Doctor into this darker sphere. He's the bringer of death now. But, 5 minutes later, 5 seconds later, it doesn't matter anymore. It's forgotten. It's meaningless. It has no consequences. It has not changed the Doctor, because he was already like this. Okay, he was already fully capable of this. So this act, this theatre of pretending to inflict moral torment on the Doctor, it's so it's done in such a safe way, a consequence-free way. It's done just for the empty pleasure of rehearsing the idea, that the thing that you're violating, and the fake taboo, the thrill of violating it in an ultimately safe way. This idea that you take the pure heroic character and you put them in the dark zone, Sonic the Hedgehog knows death for the first time. That idea, it's so prevalent there. Kind of the teenage thrill of doing that, but ultimately contained within a little box where it cannot have real consequences. It just can't, because it never can. So this empty rehearsing of the thing, it feels very steeped in this fan-written stuff that feels scared to actually transgress or actually push the show. It's just working in the tiny, very small little parochial box of what the show already is, and it really loves to rehearse declarations about what that show is, who that character is, what we know that show to be. It is because we know the Doctor is like this that we can do pathetic little scenes where we pretend that things have been broken forever and everything is so corrupted now, because they actually aren't. So that's what I really hate about that stuff. And just, shout out to that dust of death line is so fucking terrible as well. Because, the death being a gift is an interesting idea. Dust of death is just we've left Doctor Who and we've entered the shitty parody version of Doctor Who. That's what that feels like to me.
You mentioned there's a reading of Sutekh. He's perched on the TARDIS like angry fans perch on things. Anoraks perch on things, don't they? They perch on comic books or something. Another allegorical reading. This is very confusing because obviously using Sutekh is born out of Russell's love for Pyramid of Mars and his love for Sutekh. We brought Gabriel Wolfe, the great actor, back. Obviously, there's a love for Pyramid of Mars. We should talk about the cultural appropriation thing in a minute, especially Mira's, because he's been talking about the Egypt element a lot. But love of Pyramids of Mars is configured in the episode because it's bringing Sutekh back at all. Then a lot of people have this reading that Sutekh is like an angry fan because stories are really good when they're negative about fandom. So the 60th should have actually been about you want David Tennant back, you must die. And I bring Russell's hatred of fans to you. This baffles me so much. But it's this very common reading of things, especially among the media literate people, that good stories are about condemning audiences or something. I'm not saying that audiences should be defended and praised. Obviously there are shitty audiences, but I'm very confused by this idea that it's a great storytelling impulse to make your stories allegories about how much some of your audience sucks. It's an incredibly fan brain, parochial approach to storytelling. And there have been a few good stories that do that, but some people seem to want this over and over and over again. It's like this quasi-religious thing of it almost reminds me of Catholic guilt in a way.
Self-flagellation.
Yeah, self-flagellation of all. We want you to punish us. Please, Star Wars. Please, Doctor Who. Please, Marvel. Make stories about how we're bad. We need... it's very, very confusing to me, but...
Call me nasty, Daddy.
It's such a strange... I guess part of it is I want a Star Wars show, which is saying the other Star Wars fans that disagree with me are bad people, but about fans like me are good people. That's what Star Wars should be. And I want Doctor Who to be about the other Doctor Who fans are bad, and I'm good. Or sometimes it's even that, just give me a story where you're telling me I'm bad.
Loving monsters.
Just give me the story that I'm I'm bad for wanting this. If any part of me enjoyed seeing David Tennant on screen, no, whip me. You need to tell me this is wrong. You need to tell me I'm stupid for enjoying the first Tennant era. You need to tell me it's wrong to have Tennant back again. These people are, I think, mildly insane to want this. I think it's a very, very strange approach to storytelling, but a lot of people online at least seem to feel that way. And so there's this reading that Sutekh is actually about, you want Sutekh back, you must perish. How dare you want Sutekh back? It's bad to want nostalgia's bad. And, you know, it's, yes, we're doing an episode where we bring Classic Who thing back, but that's bad.
But it's bad.
Yeah, it's bad. It's bad. So Sutekh is...
Look at this terrible thing we're doing.
Sutekh is obsessed with...
It's bad on purpose.
People got quiet about this after what the giggle actually did, didn't they? But there's this idea of, you know, it's evil. It's
regressive. It is regressive.
Yes, David Tennant is extremely popular, and yes, you know, millions of British people and people worldwide would be very happy to watch David Tennant on screen again. Yes, and that's bad. And so we're making the David Tennant episodes that it's bad that most audience members are enjoying. So we're making the TV to say this piece of TV is bad if you enjoy it. And that's what so the minority of fans, like us online fans who understand this, the media literate fans, we get that it's wrong to enjoy this storytelling unit, and the other millions enjoying it are wrong to enjoy the unit. And so that's what Russell is telling me in the dreams and the voices inside my head, is that I'm right for not enjoying this and they're wrong for enjoying it. And so with Sutekh, the idea is he's obsessed over something, Ruby's mother's name, find the mother's name, and it's bad to be obsessed with things. So it's bad to be obsessed with like continuity and stuff. And so Sutekh's on top of the TARDIS and he wants a thing from the past, and it's bad to want things from the past. So the episode's actually about, it's bad to be a Doctor Who fan that cares about stuff that happened in the past. And so the story of Empire of Death is, if you care about past thing in Doctor Who, you're like evil. And so if you care that Sutekh's back, you're evil, because you shouldn't be caring about the past, and Sutekh's from the past. But Sutekh cares about Ruby's mother's, and that's bad because she's from the past. And so let's throw around the word toxicity and nostalgia and call it a day. I'm very smart.
I would say it is very difficult to read this story convincingly as being about like the badness of nostalgic fandom and obsession with continuity, considering the key to solving the entire crisis in this episode is the remembered TARDIS, the fan wank set that they've built just so Mel can like hug a past Doctor's bit of clothing.
Funny that.
And like every tiny bit of fan wank set decoration in the BBC archive can be unloaded. I was actually kind of stunned because, you know, watching Tales of the TARDIS and kind of getting this idea that something's going on with the TARDIS, it's feeding on stories, it's remembering stuff. I was thinking like, okay, this is a distortion of the show. Like something interesting is going on. Like is the TARDIS broken or something going on? Of course, we get it in this episode, and it's literally just a backup TARDIS to do fan wank. That's all it is, and it's crazy. I actually kind of hate it now. Like the memory TARDIS is like, it's not like a weird mysterious thing anymore. It's just something we're meant to react positively to because of references. That's crazy. This is like pure fan wank. It's like the power of the Doctor as set design. That's insane. Like, wow. So it's really, really hard to view this as an anti-nostalgia or anti-fan wank, anti-continuity episode in any way.
Here's the thing. You know, dogs in the real world, there are guard dogs, and guard dogs keep people away from things. So Sutekh equals dog equals guard dog. Sutekh is guarding. He's being a guard dog of Doctor. It all gets a bit blurry here. He's guarding something, and that's bad because dogs guard things, and that's dogs are bad now. That's where we're at. Dogs are bad.
Yeah. Earlier on, like Mirrors, you mentioned that it's kind of cute to have like Sutekh be a big dog and he's defeated by taking him for walkies. The thing about that is, right, I totally get the idea behind having a big climactic defeat of your villain be a humiliation, a cartoonish kind of humiliation. I think the reason it doesn't work for me is that Sutekh is already so humiliatingly checked out all episode that the humiliation of him at the climax feels unearned. Like all these scenes of him like, give me the mother's name, I need the name, this random woman, give me the name. Like this becoming his whole motivation, like at the last minute. It's like, that is so much more humiliating than being taken for walkies, because this is the annihilation of an entire character. Much more so than being dragged around in a big CGI effect.
Yeah.
Mirrors, what do you think of the Egypt stuff? Because the episode has a comment about cultural appropriation. What's going on?
Well, that's an interesting question. What exactly does he mean by its cultural appropriation? Who exactly is that aimed at?
Fuck knows.
Is because if it's supposed to be metaphorical or allegorical or whatever, if he's saying that it's amusing that the creator, that Robert Holmes and all of them, they were appropriating Egyptian culture. Were they really? Because it seems like they were just appropriating the blood of the mummy from Hammer Films. And I'm willing to say that sure, maybe they were culturally appropriating, but you brought him back, and you made him, if anything, even more Egyptian looking.
Mm.
So what exactly is it self-deprecation? It must be, but it's so toothless. The thing is, it feels like such a throwaway line. I just take it as like a little bit of self-deprecation. I don't think it's really forming any kind of critique of the pyramids of Mars or of Sutekh the character. Maybe they're, in universe trying to say, wait, so are the Osirians culturally appropriative? Are the Egyptians culturally appropriative of the Osirians? I mean, it's the Stargate problem, but shrunk down into like a little nub that you can just freeze it off.
It feels to me like RTD grasping for a bit of plausible deniability in terms of his wanking off a classic Who story, which is obviously trafficking, like, who was that character at the start who's like, who's like an unironic servant of Sutekh, and he's like this kind of scary foreigner type character, and obviously, Robert Holmes has like other stories and stuff, you can see like plenty of weird racist themes in them, and I think this kind of like this willingness to, because RTD is doing the fan wank as you describe, but he is also dimly aware that people critique a lot of these old stories for having like racist subtext to them, or just text sometimes in some cases. So it's like, it feels like if we throw in a meta line, kind of like sort of slightly sarcastically like alluding in a kind of indirect way to the idea that there might be something racist going on here, then we can just forget about it for the rest of the story and not think about it again, because we put in a little line, there you go, haha, funny, and now let's move on and keep doing all the things we were doing before.
God, imagine Davies of all writers bringing back Wang Chiang. Oh. You picture me outside a window giggling with sickos across my chest.
Just on the brief topic of like pyramids, fan wank, and appropriating things, got shout out. Neo, you mentioned earlier that RTD misremembered Pyramids of Mars, and that whole idea that in that story, like Sutekh is traveling through a time corridor from his prison underneath that pyramid or whatever to like the mansion like in England, right? He's going through his little like channel to get from there to there, and obviously the Doctor kind of fiddles with the controls to basically make sure Sutekh will be stuck in there forever, so he will never get to the other end. He's going too slowly, right? And RTD, obviously watching that as a young lad, he was like, oh, he sent Sutekh into the time vortex, because there's this effect that Sutekh is in, kind of like swirly.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't actually look like the time vortex from the opening titles, is the thing. That's a key point. But recently, there was a rebroadcast of Pyramids of Mars with some edits made by the loquacious, the effervescent Ben Kirk. And most of these edits are like decent. It cuts some little bits and pieces. It cuts some dialogue I liked, but like it's coherent.
Pretty good. Yeah.
It's not kind of crazy like the Daleks in colour one from earlier a while ago. But the thing is, one little detail they make, they add some new CGI, and for that time corridor that Sutekh's in, they took it out, they took out the effect, and they put in the time vortex from the opening title sequence from 2023. So they literally edited this old story to comply with RTD's misinterpreted, misremembered version of it.
Oh, man.
And the thing is, the thing about that is, right, I could live with that, but the thing about RTD's misinterpretation of Pyramids of Mars is that it makes Pyramids of Mars worse, because it actually makes the story quite stupid.
Yeah.
If the Doctor's great victory of Sutekh is immediately followed by him getting in the TARDIS and flying the TARDIS right past Sutekh in the time vortex, with such proximity that Sutekh can just hop on board, hitch a ride. The entire triumph of the Doctor's victory over Sutekh is completely like undermined and made quite stupid. So you've just made a worse version of the story now, and you're using that as the pretext for your grand finale. I mean, it's just, you're really making things worse. This is crazy. This is terrible. I've got to shout that out there.
You can mock away, but I find the ending to Pyramids of Mars slightly stirring or even moving. I think maybe this is my dumb, you watch Doctor Who as a young person thing, but it's an episode about gods kind of, and faith and things like that. And then the Doctor works out a sciencey way that he can like tweak the actual physical material way that Sutekh is traveling to defeat him. I think that's really... I think Tom sells it so well, the way when it looks like Sutekh's won, Tom just kind of very quickly marches off, and it's like he's almost on autopilot, that he's remembering there's a thing in the TARDIS. If he tweaks this, maybe it'll... Sutekh's won, but there's still that little 2-minute gap, and it's set up in the first or the second episode when they're talking to Lawrence about the radioscope and all that. I think it's a really cool ending, the way that it's functioning on a very physical, material aspect of the story, the time corridor, and how the Doctor can kind of...
Rationalist.
Yeah, exactly. It's a triumph of rationalism and science over, it's all very, very Doctor Who. I think it's so cool the way he dilates it's a really cool ending. I love it very much. And I don't understand how RTD understood it. But the time vortex thing, it's like it throws into a more generic Doctor Who, he just died in the big death zone thing. And it's also really confusing because... So, like we brought up earlier, how it's weird for 15 to care so much about killing Sutekh when he basically already did. But also, so if RTD is saying Sutekh could survive in the time vortex from his misunderstanding of Pyramids of Mars, why does Sutekh die at the end of this episode when he's in the time vortex? Because didn't he just survive?
Because he got kicked extra hard and he flew in with such force that he just went splat and his head broke off. He disintegrated. He flew right past Salamander in the vortex and then just hit the wall and disintegrated.
It's sort of like, in that regard, it reminds me of Tooth and Claw. How do we kill the monster that's powered by moonlight? Let's put lots and lots of moonlight in it. How do we kill the monster that survived the time vortex and became a god? Let's put lots and lots of time vortex in him. I don't know, man. This was a depressing episode.
We're talking about memories of Classic Who. It's nice with Classic Who, we remember things and we talk about things we remembered, specific memories. Like we were just talking about the ending of Pyramids to Mars. We touched on this earlier. So the memory TARDIS, it's like it symbolizes, it's textual. It is memory. That's not even subtext. I thought it was funny, the scene at the start where the Doctor's trying to power up the memory TARDIS and he's like, Ruby, you've got to remember so we can power it up. Just remember things, Ruby.
Remember all the good times in the TARDIS together, Ruby.
Remember the non-specific great moments of this season to power the TARDIS up. And he's not really saying, this feels nitpicky, but he's not really saying anything specific. It's just, please have more memories, Ruby. I'm not calling out specific good memories.
Yeah, that felt like a half-hearted riff on Series 5 again, because we talked about this, how he's kind of playing some of the Series 5 hits, and that whole thing, like Amy had to remember to make Rory alive again and bring back the universe. So it's just like a hollow callback to a much better story. I think that's all that is.
Yeah.
It's also very, I saw someone compare this to, in the fruitless preceding episode, it's like there's all this big talk is made of we can't travel in time to 2004, but we've made this thing we're going to spend a lot of the episode in the time window so we can kind of travel to 2004. So great, you had a big problem and then you solved the problem. It's like, remember what Chibnall did with Unit? My big idea was I want to break Unit up so I can bring him back together. I want to not get the Doctor to 2004 so I can get him to 2004. And then this episode, it's like, it's the same thing with the memory TARDIS, isn't it? We're trapped and we don't have the TARDIS because Sutekh has it. Oh, now we have the TARDIS. Great. It's
yeah,
literally just a backup TARDIS. That's so shit, isn't it? Like we get this, it's presented with, it's built up to with such gravity that the TARDIS has been existentially corrupted by living. Sutekh was woven himself into it, like, and we used to get like and I don't even want to talk about how that particular thread gets wrapped up, but literally it doesn't actually change the function, like the format of the story at all, because it's still just bumming around in a TARDIS that's slightly smaller. There's a really terrible scene where it's on fire for like 30 seconds. So just we can just like no jokes, no nothing. It's really boring.
It would have been really funny if the memory TARDIS inside was exactly as large as it appears to be from the outside.
Yeah.
That would be cool. It was just like tiny.
Yeah, if they had to like Bill and Ted it all the way through time, that would have been really funny. It would have made Tales from the TARDIS kind of weird, but.
We haven't actually touched on my two least favorite things about the episode yet. I love Murray Gold, and I love 15's theme very much. And so it takes a lot to make me not enjoy a scene where that theme's playing. But the kind of this, it's so hard not to be hyperbolic here. I don't want to sound like one of the media illiterate fans. I don't want to sound like I'm, molding from rage over, a stupid Docu Who thing. But there's two things in this episode that fire me up a lot. I got to stay calm. I got to do deep breaths. Okay. Whew. The whistle is one of the... No, I have to be hyperbolic. This is one of the stupidest, worst things I've ever seen in Doctor Who, ever. And I've seen, like, all of it. I've seen all of it, well, as much as you can. And I've listened to so much and I've read so much. I've experienced a lot of bad Doctor Who. So much. Too much. And the whistle is up there. This is one of the things I'll remember among the other nadirs. This would be among the worst Big Finish I've heard. This would be among some of the most insane past Doctor adventures I've read. The whistle thing is just astonishingly bad storytelling. How do I even unpack this? So the episode, this is one of the climaxes. Ruby doesn't show Sutekh the mother's name, and the Doctor blows a whistle and he gets the TARDIS back, and so they save the day. What? That you don't get to do that.
I don't know what the fuck Davies is thinking. I mean, I remember that talk about how he likes everything to be in the moment, so he doesn't want to foreshadow anything, which is haphazard fucking storytelling, but whatever. If you got the talent, you can get away with it. I don't think he got away with it. I don't think...
He talks about that, about the Paradox Machine in Last of the Time Lords, the other terrible finale. But in that...
The Paradox Machine makes way more sense than the whistle. Like, the whistle only makes sense as a fucking minor component of a very weak allegorical reading. You know, Sutekh's a big dog, so you got a whistle and a leash.
Do people actually whistle for their dogs that much? Like, do you go for walkies with a whistle around their neck? Is that common? I mean, if you're like training your dog, I mean, I don't know.
There's an elemental connection there. I mean, dog whistles are...
Oh, yeah. Okay, so yeah, dog whistle, I get you, yeah. Oh, I see what you mean, actually, yeah. A whistle only a dog can hear, I see what you mean.
But it's for the TARDIS, not the dog.
The whistle's for the TARDIS?
Yeah, it's not for the dog. Yeah, it's not for the... You know what I would have been maybe not okay with it, but I would have accepted it if it was the recorder.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's an iconic item related to the Doctor and to the TARDIS, which radically predates Sutekh's corruption of it, which is the only justification I can see for why anything should be able to break Sutekh's corruption of the TARDIS, is if it predates it. But, you know, that's just me with my stupid sci-fi brain. That's just stupid me who's watched the TV show and cared about it.
Yeah, we mentioned Last of the Time Lords a minute ago and how like the paradox machine, the issue with that basically being that in the previous episode, the Doctor's like, if we touch this the wrong way, it will blow up the world. And then in the final episode, Jack just shoots a big gun at it and that resets everything bad that's ever happened, right? And, you know, that's kind of annoying. The thing about that episode, right, as that happens, as Jack is doing that, right, that is not the climax of the episode. That is almost an afterthought. That is like a side thing happening. The climax of that episode is the other terrible thing that is distracting everyone from Jack shooting the paradox machine, which is the Doctor turning into Jesus Christ, right? But the thing about that, as terrible as that is...
It's all set up.
Martha doing her whole big... The Doctor and Martha's whole big plan to get the people of the world to pray for the Doctor and supercharge the Doctor with Jesus Ray so he can forgive the Master. Like, all of that. There is drama happening there of sorts. It has to do with the Doctor's relationship with the Master, you know, the Doctor's pity for him, the Master's fear of the Doctor, Martha's feelings towards the Doctor that she's, you know, spread around at great personal cost. Like, all of that, there's a lot of story happening there, you know, your opinion of it aside, right? So Jack shooting the paradox machine is like, it kind of pales, even though it is technically the solution to the episode, it is also kind of like tucked away in the corner, right? The whistle is not, right? There is no actual big thing to get in the way of how shit the whistle is. I think maybe the Doctor's whole big death speech is trying to be, but it's not actually there. There's no actual character content going on to distract us from the fact that the crisis of the whole episode is resolved by a magic whistle that came from nowhere and instantly fixes everything.
Shoots a laser beam.
And instantly reduces all the stakes of the episode to 0 in a split second, right? Yeah.
Why did the episode happen at all? It begs the question. So the ending of the preceding episode and the whole...
Well, they needed something to finish off the series, so...
It just makes the whole thing seem like a waste of time, nonsense, and I hate that. Gig is totally right. If there was anything else happening, I wouldn't care. No one would care because there'd be other stuff to latch onto. But so little is happening, you do kind of look at the plot and you wonder what on earth is going on here. Sutekh, why did he have the TARDIS at all? We could have just used this whistle to get it back. So the whole story had no reason to happen. And I know people will say, but in the commentary, Russell explains it. No, he doesn't. It actually makes it worse, if anything. It almost feels...
What does he say?
Well, in the actual episode, there's no explanation of the whistle. And that is better than having an explanation. Because when there's no explanation, at least you can kind of imagine the whistle, I don't know, you can make up your own reason, which is better than his. So in the commentary, he explains, originally... So there was originally a scene where when they're in the memory TARDIS, the Doctor looks up, and then later they kind of... But basically, there's like a connection between the memory TARDIS and the real TARDIS, like a compartment where the whistle gets like traded between the Doctor in the climax and the Doctor earlier on in the episode in the memory TARDIS. So it's like he gets the whistle from the future, and then he blows the whistle and he puts the whistle in the TARDIS. And so there's like a connection between the TARDISes and the magic whistle.
It's Journey to the Center of the TARDIS again.
It is Journey to the Center of the TARDIS, isn't it?
Yeah, it doesn't really explain anything. It's just like, he said he cut it out because it just seemed weird, like in the madcap chase bit of the episode at the end where they're saving the day from Sutekh, to like kind of do the exchange of the whistle. It slowed it down too much, he thinks. But that was the idea of, it's just like a temporal little bootstrappy. But that doesn't actually really explain anything. That's where the whistle comes from. That's not what the whistle is or why the whistle works.
Yeah, I would say it's not even where the whistle comes from, to be honest, is it? Because it's just adding a bootstrap loop to the thing. And that's kind of, obviously, that idea, like his coming up with that is the idea that the bootstrap loop justifies itself because it's such a cool gimmick that it makes the whistle like better somehow. It doesn't, obviously, but it's the same shit with like, Before the Flood and all the, Beethoven's Fifth. God, Paradox is amazing. Instead of having actual like point or reasons or for anything happening in your story, it's a big dump of shit.
It can be fun. It can be amazing. That is neither fun nor amazing.
No.
The whole point of the memory TARDIS is that everything inside of the memory TARDIS is from before. Yeah. It's all from... So where the... Oh my God. I'm actually more mad about the whistle now than I was, because earlier I wasn't really thinking about the fact that the whistle being in the memory TARDIS means that ontologically it has to have come from earlier in the series. And then to have it from the future of the... Oh my God, I'm so fucking mad now.
Yeah, that's quite bad.
You're right. No explanation was better.
And just before we get, I just want to make a point here, because like it might be easy for someone to listen to this and think like, oh, you're just nitpicking about the whistle, but I want to make clear what the kind of thing we would have wanted instead of the whistle, right? Is that if something so personal and horrible has happened to the TARDIS, the thing that the Doctor is like, his life is in that fucking box, right? And it has been ruined, corrupted, taken away from him, made an instrument of death. Everything's so terrible, right? Taken away from him. If the villain says this will never be yours again, right? And you're going to have ultimately the Doctor get it back somehow, rekindle that relationship, then something should be, I don't know, there should be some kind of emotion there, right?
Yeah.
The Doctor should have to do something. Something about their relationship should be important.
There should be something that we can be attached to.
Yes, it should be something we can be attached to, right? Instead of just like a little magic device that he can use to instantly fix everything.
I see the seams or the strings in this scene, which really annoys me because I was so cold to it. And it almost retroactively made me feel like there's so many episodes where the resolution is kind of crap, but Murray is really is doing everything he can to make it work. And, maybe the actors are doing so-and-so, and everyone's trying their best to kind of make it work. And often the show kind of skates by on that. But in this, you've got 15's, lovely, amazing, propulsive theme playing, and Shooty and Millie are all energetic and dashing about, and it's meant to be very exciting. And I'm just sitting there like catatonic, like nothing's happening. Really, like, what is this meant to mean? It just feels like 5-year-olds smashing action figures together to me. Like nothing's being said. Nothing's resolving anything. He's just blowing a whistle really hard, and it kind of plays with the music in an interesting way. And then he gets the TARDIS back, and then he says, "Love my whistle" to Ruby. It's just like, I feel like, why was this made? And why am I watching it?
The best fucking part is that it's not even just the whistle, is it? In that moment, there's like a collision of 3 separate gimmick devices. You have the whistle, you have the intelligent rope, which was introduced, specifically earlier in the episode, just so it could be used here as a rope, I guess. It did nothing earlier in the episode, it was just there. And then, of course, you have the glove as well. You have intelligent rope, intelligent glove, and an intelligent fucking whistle, apparently. Like, we're just overloading with little pieces of shit. Like, the toys are multiplying. And it's like, there is no drama here. It is a complete black hole. Everything is reduced to pathetic little, like, inanimate objects. Like, pure, absolute, just abysmal despair. Crazy. And you're right, I completely agree that this is ruining 15's theme for me as well. Like, just hearing it play over this shit. So bad.
So, we go from the whistle... I guess we've kind of covered the death-to-death stuff is pretty weird. Like, I assume some people are saying this brings Gallifrey back and this brings everything back.
Why would it?
My reading, this seems to me it's just bringing back the stuff from this episode, because that's all we're talking about is Sutekh killed everything, and then we rip the vortex and it brings life back. I guess you could use it as a little lore hacky thing later if someone else wants to do that, but I don't think that was the vibe at all.
It's just unsnapping.
Yeah.
You're not going to bring ScarJo back. But I mean, you could say that, I don't know, I would be willing to accept that it unkilled all the people who died in
Flux?
Pyramids, maybe.
Pyramids, yeah.
Definitely not Flux. Absolutely not Flux. Or I was going to say, or the Osirans, but actually I think, didn't the Time Lords kill the Osirans? I can't remember. It's been a while since I watched that. I'm thinking of the Fendaline.
Oh. You mentioned the unsnapping. I just want to shout out, look, a little side hop here. I think the whole snapping and the unsnapping, compared to, as a Doctor Who apocalypse and stuff, as the big worst thing ever happening, it feels very weightless, doesn't it? Even though it's not the fact that it's going to be reversed, right? Because there are lots of stories where a really terrible thing happens that will be reversed. Like, take Pandorica opens, right? At the end of that episode, the entire universe is obliterated. But the thing is, it is presented in an incredibly striking fashion. You have that wonderfully unsettling moment of the music cutting to silence at the end of an episode. And, maybe more importantly, it's layered with other things. Like, you've got, like, the Doctor begging the Alliance to listen to me. No. You've got Rory succumbing to his robot programming and cradling Amy's body. You've got River she finally gets out of the TARDIS having to find a brick stone fucking wall in her way, and she turns her head as it explodes behind her. Like, there's so much going on. I cried watching that as a young lad. God, how many fucking years ago was that? Anyway, yeah, I cried watching that. But the thing is, like, and it's you need to actually use technique to make these things feel important, and we get like none of that here. We get the sanding, like it feels very throwaway. You get Kate's little scene, and it's like, oh, okay. And then when they all come back at the end, it's like, oh, ha 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 ha, yay, clap.
Yeah.
Something just feels like really, really small scale for some reason. I can't quite put my finger on it.
And it's put together so poorly too. Why wasn't it the cliffhanger of last episode?
Yes! Why wasn't it the cliffhanger of last episode? Very good fucking question, to be honest. Like, just dumping it at the start of this week, it just makes it feel even worse. Like, just why?
What the fuck are we doing?
And the cliffhanger last week was so bad.
Because then we would be able to sit with it for a week and say, ooh, I wonder how they're going to get out of this one. Is he just trying to avoid the fact that would have meant a week of people saying, this is kind of like that superhero movie from a few years back, as though he's going to start worrying about that now.
Instead, we just got like JNT era style Shooty making a face of like, while Susan held her hand out to him. That was the cliffhanger. It was so pants. but it's okay, guys, because we had fucking Sutekh puns. Wasn't that an amazing cliffhanger?
I kind of wish that I had managed that. I kind of wish that I had heard your guys' podcast for the previous episode before recording this one, because I have so many fucking thoughts about that, and it's still going around in my head. Sutekh,
the perfect trap.
That is the worst. That is the sort of thing that is poisonous, rotten fanboy brain.
Absolutely.
If you reorganize all the letters, they form a fucking anagram or an acronym. It's the fucking. You remember when they were filming Dark Water, Death in Heaven, and on the day of filming out in public, in order to avoid spoilers, they had Michelle Gomez deliver some different version of the "I'm Missy" short for mistress, so that it came out as short for RANI.
Yeah, so yeah, stuff like
You
that.
remember hearing about that? This is that, but they put it on Disney Plus and expect us to fucking enjoy it. I'm steamed. And not just because I'm in a hot car right now. I'm very steamed.
And I would say it reflects on this episode as well, because ultimately the whole shit with Sutekh, as we pointed out, like, it's such a ridiculous thing to be doing with the character of Sutekh, like having him suddenly obsessed with like weird kind of backwards puns that don't really make sense. I mean, and then this week you get him obsessed with Ruby's mum, and it's like, we're just doing whatever with this character. He's not a character anymore.
The only value to it is that it kind of connects him to Susan. And brings Susan into the discussion about what's going on with Ruby. Connects the larger story arc to Susan is what I'm trying to say. Is to essentially to remind us that Susan exists, because it feels like they want to do that next season. And I don't know about that, man. I mean, yeah, I'd like Susan to come back, but not like this, man.
Yeah, it's funny, this week we learned that, I guess, the point of the various, apparitions of Susan Triad across time and space was to spread the dust of death, blah, 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 blah. But the thing is, they weren't all named Susan, were they? Like, one of them, the Space Babies one was named, what was it, Gina something, or Gina Scalzi. So they weren't all called Susan. And I realized earlier today that there's no actual point in this one on Earth being called Susan at all. It doesn't actually contribute to the plot. We find out that Sutekh attacked because of Ruby's mum, or whatever. Not because the Doctor visited Susan Triad on Earth. She had, her being Susan...
But he said that he named her Susan to lure the Doctor in.
Yeah! But it was just this one that was called Susan, because apparently the other ones weren't called Susan. I mean, Gina Scalzi, she's like...
So it has to have something to do with... Right?
It's got nothing, her being called Susan has no relevance to Sutekh's plot, nothing to do with his scheme. I guess it leads to that moment where, do you think I was family, Doctor? I bring my dust of death to you. But it's it doesn't actually factor into the wider plan to bring death to the universe. It's not a key point. It doesn't actually, the trap for the Doctor there is not actually really much of a trap at all. If anything, what spurs Sutekh to reveal himself is the Doctor looking for Ruby's mum, apparently. So the whole Susan Triad mess was, completely irrelevant. So that's just how worthless all of that ended up being.
I usually let Davies slide on the really sloppy plotting, because even at his best, it's never been his strong suit.
But usually there's something else.
But he hasn't brought any of his strong suits to play, so we're focusing on the weak shit now.
I would say it is fun. I haven't enjoyed ripping into an episode like this since Chib, so his good old day is coming back in one sense.
Yeah. Like I said, I am an optimist and I am always disappointed.
Should we talk about the other thing that makes you super angry, Nia, or is there something else you want to get onto first? Because you mentioned two things.
No, yeah, that's my least favourite part of the episode. It's a race to the bottom.
Less than the whistle.
Yeah, there was something I disliked more. So, I mentioned it right at the start. So the way the story all resolves, the first episode before the Sunday episode, it's kind of the transition into that, is we learn Ruby's mother's name. We found the mother's name, and she's an ordinary woman. And so Ruby's saying she loves her for being ordinary, but how did she stay invisible from a god? She defeated Sutekh. And the Doctor says, she was important because we think she's important. That's how everything happens, every war, every religion, every love story. We invest things with significance. So while the whole of creation was turning around her, it made her sheer existence more powerful than Time Lords and gods. In the end, the most important person in the universe was the most ordinary, a scared little girl making her baby safe. And then they do the signpost thing, which we can talk about in a sec. That's also stupid. But so I love the whole thing of ordinary is more important than extraordinary. Yes, most people watching the show are on board with that, including me. And the show has done that in all sorts of ways. Both Chib and Moff and Russell have all done it heaps. Even Klasiku's done stuff like that. That's great. That's great. We're normal people watching the show. We're not extraordinary. We're ordinary too. And so, that sort of story usually works pretty well. Rose Tyler, of course, it's done so. I love, isn't it so stirring in Parting of the Ways, how it's Jackie kind of believing and supporting her daughter and then getting the vehicle to, rip open the TARDIS is like how the day is kind of saved. It's all ordinary stuff. Jackie knowing so-and-so, that's beautiful. I love that. And Donna Noble, most important woman in the universe. I think some of that's kind of misplayed in a strange way in Journey's End, but I love the idea of, Donna is a regular person, but she's so amazing for all that. This sort of stuff, I think it's very few fans are not going to like this stuff. We're ordinary people. Of course, we're going to identify and be flattered by the idea that our ordinariness is, actually an exquisite thing in lots of ways. That's beautiful. That's great. I'm not against that thing at all. And I agree. I like who Ruby's mother ended up being. I like that story. Very, very human story about a teenager, the bad family situation and all that. That's great. I like all that story. That's good. I'm not against that bit.
I have one problem with it, which is that Ruby's mother is the same age as me, and I don't like that I'm old enough to be a companion's parent, that I'm old enough to be an RTD parent now. I don't like that, but go on.
The thing I really dislike, it's basically two lines there. She was important because we think she's important, and we invest things with significance. That might be that might be the worst set of words I've ever heard in Doctor Who, and I've heard a lot of them. We invest things with significance is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. What kind of point is that? We think things are important. Yeah, we do. What is being, what? Can you unpack this for me?
I can, but I don't know that you'll be any happier at the end of it.
Go for it.
I think what he's trying to do here is he's trying to come up with a justification after the fact for why the emotional climax of the story also resolves the action climax, which has always been, again, one of his weakest points. It's always been an area that Doctor Who writers have struggled with a little bit. It's where we get that meme of the power of love endings. So he needs to come up with some justification for why an ordinary woman becomes this whole situation. And again, I think it comes back to he's trying to not be in the storytelling mode of, regular ass Doctor Who episode. He's trying to get into the mythic storytelling mode. And in that sense, I guess what he's saying is, with Ruby and her and Carla and Cherry, presumably, all ritualistically watching this video every year at Christmas, no less, they have essentially mythologized Ruby's mom's anonymity. And so she's the goddess of unwed mothers? I don't know. I don't have a perfect explanation for it. It's just, he's trying to say that, I don't know, man. It's a weak attempt at justifying, and he is ironically investing too much significance into it by making it the crux of the fucking. I didn't care for it either.
He's been very clear with what he's trying to say with it. He's gone on at length about how, I wanted to do a domestic story and I want to make an ordinary girl as more powerful than Time Lords and gods, because who cares about all that stuff? Like a mundane story of a teenage girl. And
yeah, but he does that every season.
See, the thing is, right, he set out, was that as his thesis, that's what he was going to do. But the problem is, the story he told does not actually demonstrate that this is, like, the story he told does not actually place value on Ruby's mum and her story proportional to what he's trying to do here. Because he has spent the vast majority of the story fucking around in myth wank suggestions and stuff that has no emotional content whatsoever. He was, magic clues, time is doing this, time is doing that, isn't time warping around, and then the actual, like, human story is cordoned off to the last 10 minutes of the last episode, right? So, yeah. The thing is, if you actually want to prove that your show is about people and families, you make those things central to your story. You marshal all the elements of your story so that they enhance those themes rather than undermine them or make them work in a really awkward way. And it's just, it feels like another one of those things where RTD has written the thesis of what he wants to do in the story, and then he's put that in the character's mouth, the Doctor's in this case, rather than actually make it work. So this shit about how, essentially, if we look at it, what's literally happening, essentially what he's written is time works in such a way so that I guess like powerful feelings like those about Ruby's and her mother, Ruby's regarding her mother, can actually warp time and make crazy shit happen, like just manifesting like a huge black hood on someone who wasn't actually wearing it.
Oh God.
Or like making someone impossible to perceive because we were wondering about them so much, and their imperceivability has made the actual person imperceivable. And it's basically and make snow appear, make like moments of history bleed through because your emotions about them are so strong. And I guess what's awkward on one hand is that we've had so much stress on this idea that this is a special event, that this is weird, that the Doctor has never seen anything like this before, that this is like unconceivable. Even gods are like confused by what's happening here. They've never seen this before. And it's very weird if you then go, well, this is about something that actually has happened a lot. Ruby is not unique at all. This is a relatable thing. Many people have wondered who their parents were. Many people have been abandoned. Many people have been orphaned or left behind. Ruby is not actually special in this respect. So, you basically just piled on fake specialness to Ruby's story, rather than actually like explore how Ruby and her story are so like rather than actually making them sacred or important. You've introduced this bizarre kind of annoying version of the universe and version of time that just contorts itself so that things are mysterious for mystery's sake. So basically whatever, just so viewers watching the TV show can have something that looks mysterious, we now have time tying itself in knots to add a mystery to things, just so that they seem more mysterious than they are. And frankly, that is not a universe I want to watch stories from, because that sounds fucking annoying to deal with. Time can just like shroud things whenever the narrative needs them to be shrouded. It's fucking insane. And again, like I said before, it spends so much time on the empty wank, the stuff that is going to reveal as meaningless and having no connective tissue to the human story. It spends 40 minutes on that stuff and just dumps all the stuff that it supposedly values right at the end. And it's just, and of course throughout the season we'd have barely any character stuff for Ruby throughout the whole fucking season. So it's like, you have not put your money where your mouth is regarding your themes.
That's the thing. Yeah.
You have just empty words. That's all it is.
It reminds me of the Impossible Girl arc, but in like the worst possible way. Because throughout the Impossible Girl arc, we're also seeing that Clara is a normal woman in her everyday, existence. Whatever. I didn't care for it.
It's like Giga's saying, it's like this self-satisfaction about something the story hasn't actually done, which makes it clang extra hard. Like there's Moffat, like the Big Bang and stuff, a lot of these episodes are making wanky meta statements at the end, but the episodes kind of built up to them. They kind of justify them. It's like you can have a summative statement that's wank if you told the wank before. You have to wank to have the product of the wank, basically. And this episode wasn't doing that. It had big dog death, dog spoon run around for most of the story. And then at the end, it's almost a vaguely, I'm not trying to get too psychoanalytic about myself or the show here, but I almost feel like a vaguely scolding tone in that dialogue, that she's important because we think she's important. Everything happens because of this. We invest things with significance. It's like this vaguely, I really dislike the connotations of everything saying there. So everything ever, every war, every religion happens because people think things are important. It's delivered with this weight, this loftiness, because he's saying everything ever happens because of this. Like it's this huge point, but it's such a facile non-statement that it beggars belief. Like people think things are important. Everyone, like, that's not even a statement. Yes, people find things important. Like, what?
I almost wonder if he's trying to pitch it as like a subjective, a subjectivist universe interpretation thing.
Yeah.
And that I'm willing to approach it from, and in that regard, it's still not great, but at least it's functional,
It's like a spoon has no significance to this drawer of cutlery. The spoon has significance to a person because the person invests the spoon with significance. That there might be sentimental value to the spoon or this functional value to the spoon. That isn't an interesting point. That's the point. That's how how it's so basic and foundational to everything ever that it feels to even unpack it is like insane. Yes, things are important because people find them important or make them important. That to make that like the summative statement, like the thesis of a story, is so
a whole story arc, several episodes of mystery and like blooming snow bursting through and supernatural occurrences.
It just consumes itself.
All because we invested, all because like, you know, Ruby and maybe the Doctor a bit and Carla a bit wondered who Ruby's mum was. The Doctor says the entire cosmos was turning around her. Fucking when? When? I guess maybe that's that subjectivist thing, because I guess for like Ruby, the whole cosmos was turning around this mystery. Yeah. But again, it's like, you know, are we living in Ruby's little snow globe like head, or are we actually living in a universe with other people in it? You know, like you're just like, again, and it just feels like the mechanics of the universe are being forcefully wrangled to warp around, I guess, the narrative of the show, rather than like having any sort of like, rather than doing anything that means anything, rather than like having systems in a world that affect each other, like consequences like affected by people's decisions. You just have a universe that does whatever the narrative needs it to do, and that is just really frustrating to me and really empty. Yeah, hate it.
I've seen a lot of people really like the line and do statements on that. I saw one person say something. Well, I've seen a few people say this, that basically it's brilliant because the characters in the show are investing things with significance, and then we as the audience are investing the story with significance, and that's brilliant because
it actually had no significance whatsoever. Bravo.
It's like this self-satisfaction I don't understand what people find brilliant about the line or the scene or the dialogue in general, but there seems to be there's something people are seeing that I'm not seeing, where it's like, it's brilliant because it's so true. It's so true that people do find things important, but you cannot, anyone that's old enough, so anyone beyond like 3 that's old enough to talk, gets that some people find things important. Like, you cannot find, how is this meaningful to or radical to anyone that yes, things are important because people find them important, and that's kind of personal and interpretive, that act. I'm just baffled by what are people taking from this. And I've read a lot, I've read as much as I can on people finding this meaningful because I'm trying to understand, but all I can really find is this vacuous thing of, that is deep, isn't it? That people find things important. But yeah, they do.
People are ironically, people are investing a great deal of significance into it.
Is it just the turn of phrase?
Yeah, it is a little catchy, and Davies put it at an ideal place in the episode to be, you know, catchy and memorable.
We invest things with significance. That line.
Yeah, he's put it.
What? That's clunky as hell. I don't find that catchy at all. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, leaving aside the turn of phrase for now, he's put it in exactly the same place as We're All Stories in the End.
Okay.
Which is, of course, from the episode that this is ripping off.
The thing with that's an actual story. The Big Bang.
Another way of phrasing it, the way I took it, is the only significance things have is what we invest in them.
And that's like,
which again goes back to like a subjectivist reading of it, and I don't think that Davies really goes in for that sort of thing usually. I mean, except in the broad, you know, humanist sense.
I guess the trouble with it all is that we can go, oh, how subversive. You thought she was going to be some big cosmic thing, but she wasn't. The thing is, the only reason any viewer thought that Ruby's mum might be some big cosmic thing is that RTD was piling on these fucking empty scenes of Ruby's mum doing weird, making weird cosmic things happen. So it's literally just the writer piling or constantly suggesting, working overtime to suggest a mythic significance to this event, to this woman.
Yeah, and there's not even like an escape hatch where it's all obvious in retrospect. Oh, we were over signifying her. You know.
Yeah.
It's nothing like that.
Like, I confess, like, I was not so much excited to learn who Ruby's mum might be. I was more fucking terrified that she might be someone like really, really awful, like the Rani or what the fuck ever, the Doctor's mum or something like that. I was terrified. But yeah, I was rooting for the whole, she's just a normal woman, right? And I think it's very easy to think, well, maybe she's just a normal woman.
Same.
It's like the most obvious twist you could do, besides it being maybe Ruby from the future dropping herself off, which would have been shit as well. But it's like, you know, it's the idea, like, who has RTD got the drop on in doing this twist? Who has he subverted? What great blummin', like, fan misinterpretation situation as he like pulled the rug out from under here, other than what he himself wasted time piling significance on and setting up, sometimes the detriment, I guess, of the season overall. I mean, how many times in these 2 episodes is Ruby just stuck going, why can't I see her? Why can't I see her? Why'd she point at you? Why is she pointing? Why can't I see her? Like, it's like on a fucking autopilot. It's crazy. That's kind of the writing we were getting. Why? Instead of anything with like content, just a fucking repeating record. And that's what he's doing instead of writing the actual story. So it's like, God, you sacrificed decent writing so you could subvert the crap writing that you did into something that is not even very good anyway. It's like, it's crazy making stuff.
It really frustrates me because it actually is the thing that I mock a lot that I don't think happens, where it's like, imagine making the David Tennant specials about the David Tennant specials being bad. That's like the absurdity of all absurdities. So I've mocked that idea a lot, but this kind of was that idea in a way. It's because Russell himself had mythologized Ruby's mother in the narrative by the time. He makes fun of it on the commentary. He's talking about, she was in a cloak because time was shrouding her.
Fucking hate that. God damn it.
And, she's doing the mysterious pointing. So Russell raises this, it looks very mysterious what this could be, her mother. And then he does like the triumphant deflation and, we just invest things with significance. But the actual story was investing things with significance. And then the story is like doing a turnaround of, we were silly to invest things with significance. That actually is doing the Tenet thing that I think is ridiculous. It's the show actually like cancelling itself out, saying, yeah, I made it look like this, but it wasn't actually this. And yay, that's like incredible. The only thing being subverted is the thing itself here. Like there was never like a humanistic element of it that we should have been seeing. The only thing that was built up was the self-important mythologizing, time hood, crazy, who is this woman? Is it the Rani? The story was doing that. And then to like, and I always thought it would be like a regular story because that's, what you'd expect from Russell T Davies. But then to undercut it by doing that, it's like, I don't understand the point we were making, because we already had ad nauseum, ordinary is the extraordinary. That's all great, but it's not even a triumph of being ordinary, is it, in the end, really? Because the only opposition is the thing it was doing itself, which is like, in Space Baby, she pointed at me in a mysterious way, and in the time window in Legend, we couldn't see her face. It feels like non-drama to me, because there was never an actual opposition built up to it. There was never anyone arguing, maybe this is just a normal thing. Maybe Ruby, we're not looking at the right way. No, it's definitely a monster. There was never like the two sides of it in the story. There was just the self-important and then the not self-important way. And then the episode acts like it's doing a big thing by unwrapping that. But do you get what I mean? That's like, it's non-drama because we never had two choices.
Yeah. It's self-obsessed in the worst way. It's self-deprecating in the worst way because it's destroying itself before it can build itself.
Like what I realised with you guys just talking about how this is just media about itself, it's like even when RTD talked about how, I wanted to do a story where the ordinary girl was way more powerful than Time Lords and gods, even just in starting out with that as his thesis, it already gives away that actually he's more concerned about the Time Lords and the gods, isn't he? Because if you were a fucking fan-brained dipshit, would you think that we need to prove ordinary people are more important than Time Lords and gods? Only fan brains even like have that as a thing it's possible to care about in the first place. Everyone else would just tell the human story like it's important in the first fucking place. They would not go to lengths and pains to create this whole structure to prove and display the superiority of human stories to Time Lords and gods. Like, this is just, so literally in what is supposedly a humanistic premise, he's actually starting out from a fucked up fan-brained Sutekh kind of worthless premise. Yeah. So it's just poisoned from step one, isn't it? It's the triumph of fan brain over a supposedly anti-fan brain instinct. That's crazy. That's like fucking Inception going on here.
Such crap.
On this kind of note, in the commentary, Russell invokes Star Wars, the new Star Wars is with the story he was trying to tell here. So he says the Ruby Mother stuff was his reaction to the Rey stuff in Star Wars. And so that, like, of course, the deal there was so Force Awakens, J.J. Abrams kind of sets up Rey's parentage mysterious as like a flashback of her on the desert planet or whatever.
There's something important about her.
Last Jedi, Rian Johnson, no, just ordinary. We invest things with significance. The last one, I can never do the name of the last one right. The episode,
The Rise of Skywalker. Yeah.
J.J. Abrams is back, and actually, family was important, just like one generation above. She's the Emperor's granddaughter, or whatever. And so Russell is like saying he didn't like that the Rey's parentage did end up important And so we wanted to do a story where like the chosen one-ish main character whose parentage was actually just total, it wasn't Rassilon, it was just a very ordinary woman. I feel like the issue there is in the Star Wars movies, the interesting thing with the parentage thing is it's a trade-off. We have two creatives there, J.J. Abrams and Rian Johnson. J.J. Abrams kind of sets up the mystery, and then Rian Johnson subverts it and says, no, it's nothing. And then J.J. Abrams comes back and says, no, actually, it is a thing. But with Russell, he's trying to be both people there. He's being JJ and Ryan. He's being the JJ setting up, oh, there's a mystery. And then he's being the Ryan saying, and that's stupid, there's no mystery. But that's kind of insane to do it yourself, right? Like the Star Wars thing, it's a reaction. You know, there was a setup, then we deflate the setup, and then he comes back to go, no, actually, I'm using my setup again. I think it's just kind of bizarre to do it as one person because then there is no like response.
It's the sort of reason that maybe one person shouldn't write an entire series of television.
I mean, he wrote almost all of Series 1, didn't he? Like, he wrote huge amounts of that. But I guess he was a better writer at that point, so there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, like, before we, I mean, the whole subversion thing, like, I mean, it's not so much that RTD subverted fans who were totally expecting Ruby's mum to be, like, Dalek Omega Susan hybrid fucking, like, cosmic Rani being, but more that he subverted anyone who thought that there'd be connective tissue between the different parts of the story. So the idea that, like, pointing at the Doctor would, like, or, like, the snow would mean something, essentially, because the big subversion is actually the psych, like, the snow was just, like, a fucking random time thing. There's no real purpose to it. So it's, like, you know, in essence, it's so annoying. Because the thing is, fans who, like, watched the show and kind of assumed that all these different elements in it would connect together and actually build to something, that they'd be part of a larger whole, that's not a bad thing, because what they want out of that is for those things to lead to something with emotional weight, right? The entire promise of telling stories on such a large scale across, like, 8 or more hours with all these episodes and all these worlds and all these, like, I guess, like, the whole promise of mystery arcs like this in the first place is that when we get the reveal, conceivably, you know, the answer, there will actually be emotional weight to it. It will be like that, or the darkest secret ever, or the massive climax, or people just want to feel things, right? Is that worth, like, dragging them and attacking them for? Like, yeah, some people feel things at weird stimuli, that is fair enough. And people have weird ideas of what would have emotional weight sometimes. But ultimately, all they want is to feel things. So, you know, even people who wanted Ruby's mum to be like a fucking god, whatever, presumably they wanted that because that would have, like, massive emotional consequences for Ruby and, like, massive, like, stakes for the Doctor and Ruby and for everyone. So, you know, is it really worth, like, beating them over the head with, oh, you fucking fool? I mean, it's yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it just feels like a whole huge waste of time to me.
Just a weird little lingering thing. We kind of opened the negative stuff with some of the yards. No, yeah, with the yards connections we talked about very early on. Is it kind of weird for like so the day is solved by getting the Ruby mother stuff, and then, you know, we do the whistle from there by not giving it to Sutekh. We get the mother stuff because Roger Ap Gwilliam did some bizarre, he makes everyone give up their DNA or whatever. He has to do a big register of all Britain's DNA.
Thank God for fascism.
Yay, eugenics.
Yeah, it's just not a huge complaint. It's just a kind of odd note that the day is saved thanks to future Prime Minister being very sketchy.
It also, like, hinges on Ruby's mum still being alive in 2046. Like, they never even express, like, this might not work, you know? So it's very convenient that she was, I guess, in that timeline.
Yeah.
Also, they skip around timelines a lot in this episode, but I'm not going to sit here and complain about that, of all things, at this point.
Yeah, in a way, like, the Doctor goes on and on about how Earth is dying at every point in its history that I've ever landed at, so it's happening in all at once in all these different time zones. It doesn't feel like that, of course, but ultimately all it means is just an excuse for us to still be able to go to 2046 and solve the plot. So it's like, yeah, okay, everyone's died, but also everything is still around, conveniently. It's just a way to make the apocalypse less apocalyptic.
Yeah, the Big Bang handled it so much more effectively, showing, like, the breakdown of time and causality and whatever.
And Wedding of River Song did the same thing. I don't know if you'd give that the same praise.
Yeah, like, they approach it with the stuff with, you know, the woman on Chib Planet and all that stuff, but that one scene is, I guess, really the only effective emotional connection that the story has to the whole Sutekh plot.
I've got to be honest, I fucking hate that scene on rewatch. I realised, holy shit, this is actually really bad, isn't it? Because it's just like, rather than doing a real scene, which is very sad because of how it's executed, it's just line after line trying to be sad. It's just trying to be as sad as possible. The woman just monologues about, oh, things are so sad now, and oh, I'm still holding on to my dignity despite how sad things are, and oh, they used to be singing, and oh, I think I forgot my daughter. I'm gonna die now. Bye. The convenient tragic thing happens to her at the end of a long tragic sequence of lines, and it's like, and also of course it builds up to the spoon, like the spoon's gonna matter, and then straight away the Doctor breaks it in half and just jams it in the thing. It could literally have just been any object. Oh my god, it really. I think RTD talked about how I think this must be the scene that he referred to as potentially it might have been cut. Like he went back and forth on whether the scene with the guest actor was going to be in the episode, and I think you can see why, because you could take it out and it makes no fucking difference whatsoever. It's just a very shallow and kind of feeble attempt to make this apocalypse feel like it has a human element by piling more shit onto it. Like, oh, it can go backwards from child to mother, and it makes you amnesiac as well,
which also seems like it should be significant with what everything else is going on in the story, but it's not.
Childs and mothers and things. You think maybe something to do with it, but no, obviously it isn't.
Childs and mothers. What did you think of the very, very ending with Ruby leaving the Doctor? So Ruby very distracted on her phone because finding out about her biological dad. Ruby slips up and calls her biological mother her real mum, which Russell wanted as like a, young people, this big exciting new thing you're going to slip up. It's like how Rose says you're so gay to 9 in series 1. Russell likes doing young characters sometimes misspeaking in those sorts of ways. The Doctor and Ruby leave each other. Doctor saying your adventure begins. And now I think about families differently. We'll meet again one day, but go on, have a great time. Ruby says, I love you. The Doctor's very stoic now. After the bi-generation, he's got angst and he's less emotionally opened up. So now he doesn't say things like that back to people like 14 would, and they go off their separate ways. What do we think of that ending scene?
I can accept that he sort of breaks up with her because she found her mom, but not returning the I love you is kind of... That really does feel like the whole point of the bi-generation wasn't to get rid of the angst. It was to just do all the same angst over again, because that is literally the exact same thing that happened in Doomsday.
And it's worse again, though. Like, I keep coming back to this refrain. We're doing worse versions of old NewWho things, because it's just like, rather than like Tennant or whatever, where he's trying to say to Rose at Bad Wolf Bay, if it's my last chance to say it, Rose, and he gets cut off dramatically at the end. Yeah, I mean, there's so much emotion there. This is something really weird happening with 15 in this scene. I mean, I found, as ever, I love Millie and Ruby and everything that's going on with her. And then it's like 15's side of the scene that I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Because he has some terrible lines like, you made my life bigger and better. I talk about family in a way I've never done before. Funny story there. In an interview RTD was giving before this aired, he said almost those exact words. He was like, oh, this man who talks about family in a way he's never done before. So when 15 said that in the episode, I was like, but anyway, that's not my point. So this what happens here at the end when Ruby says, I love you, there's something so strange, because it's like, it doesn't just feel like a regression for like the Doctor overall. It feels like a regression for 15. It's like, who is this guy all of a sudden? Because 15 has been so emotionally like open in lots of ways. He's been crying and screaming and all over his place and everything, and he's been so huggy and friendly with Ruby. And it's like he can't even. It's this weird response. It's not even like I wouldn't even necessarily call it that much of a stoic response. He gives this weird smirk, and then he just like turns away, and it's like, okay. It's like he. And then when she leaves, of course, he breaks down like sobbing and crying again. It's just like something feels very empty about it. It's just I think it's very, very crap. Okay, that's basically my opinion there. Like, I really like Ruby kind of trying not to like say, like trying to convince herself that she could still say somehow, then giving up and saying I'm sorry. That's all really cool. But when she's like, she's like, you could come and see my dad, and then rather than 15 responding, she's like, oh, but you don't do that, do you? Again, no response from 15. We're just treating these things as truisms now. Like, oh, of course, the Doctor would never come and see your dad, and we're not actually going to interrogate that. It's like we're back in Chibhu, basically, like with fucking Yaz, just accepting that the Doctor's going to dump her on the side of the road. It's like, oh no, why mentally have we gone back to the worst place we could be? Oh.
It's like the worst possible time for a Russell T Davies to resort to writing generic Doctor,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mind Ruby. I see some people are like, why the hell don't they keep traveling? They can just 15 can pick her up like in 6 months after she's settled or something. That doesn't... what bothers me is 15 regressing there. I don't mind her not wanting... I think that makes sense. I think most companions, at least in NewWho, they kind of travel... They're not people that are totally stable and have extremely happy home lives. There tends to be some kind of hole in them, right? And the adventure kind of fills that hole. We made this very textual in Series 9, but I think it tends to go with pretty much any companion, because for a companion to be interesting, they need to kind of want to travel. And for them to want to travel, there's probably something at home they're not super satisfied with. Rose, life was boring. Martha's kind of a funny one. Donna, life was boring.
Martha's got her family.
Yeah, Amy has all her stuff going on. Then Clara's the big one. Even Yaz, Graham, Ryan, we even in Series 11 build up in Woman and Arachnids, reasons they have to travel. So I think there's always like a hole in a companion, basically new companions, and the hole is filled with adventure. And so Ruby kind of, I'm not phrasing this well, Ruby kind of fills her hole with her mother. No, okay. Ruby...
By pointing out that you're phrasing it badly, you've drawn our attention to it and made it worse. Okay, you make sure you're aware of that.
I don't even have to edit a second of this. I could just cut this out and put it right on the internet.
Ruby self-actualizes by finding her biological mother. She's kind of satisfied what she was looking for with her mother there. So she doesn't need to... I get the... I'm sure she could still go off and have adventures the way, Martha kept adventuring now and again afterwards. But it makes total sense to me that the kind of main adventures stop at that point. I don't think that's weird at all, because I'm sure it'd still be fun to go off to crazy planets now and again. But she's kind of fixed herself, to use the giggle phrasing. She's kind of got what she needs out of her home life now. So I don't find that weird at all, that Ruby would be less caring about adventuring now. Of course, she's got less to... She doesn't have to run away from anything. She's kind of settled home more. So that worked for me.
Yeah, not just finding her birth mother, but like reuniting with her and bringing the father in. It's a massive, massive life event, and it's going to completely change everything about her.
You don't want to go off adventuring then, yeah.
Yeah.
The adventure's at home now.
Yeah, the doctor isn't going to pick her up next week, and say, all right, so back to what we were doing, let's off to Barcelona.
I know theoretically in the narrative he could come back in a year and then they just keep adventuring, but that would be even more bizarre, unstory-like storytelling than this episode already did.
She's going to be a totally different person in a year.
Yeah.
I am reminded slightly of some moments in the Pond era where the Ponds would just be at home, and then the Doctor would turn up and hey guys, come on an adventure. Amy and Roy would suddenly be living somewhere start of Series 6, and it's just how much time has passed since they last saw him, and it's they don't even care. They just get straight back into it. So it's kind of this well, whatever, yeah, cool. And in a way, I wonder, I feel like you could almost... It seems like RTD really wants to do the tearful breakup is the thing, which I guess sits in a way, because I completely agree with you guys. Absolutely, this is the time in Ruby's life for her to actually spend time, living, with her people, with her family, and learning things about herself and actually living her life. And it's I don't know, it just feels like making it, in order to make this a really sad thing, the Doctor has to actually pretty much ditch her as a friend, and just okay, you're not gonna stay in touch with you. I'm fucking off and getting a new companion.
And abandonment's her thing. So,
oh, God, yeah, it is. God,
so
yeah.
The Doctor abandoning her, yeah.
So I guess in a way, it's because it's the closed offness of the Doctor there is what makes us feel what the fuck is going on, because he's actually the key to this. He's the reason this is so sad. It's because he will not come with her to see her dad she asked him to, that this is so tragic for her, and because we aren't interrogating that really, that this is all going so weird and out the window. And it's so ironic that the Doctor's banging on about how you've made me so much more family oriented, but he can't stay with the family because that's more 14 speed. He's not that man anymore.
I think that actually what might be happening with 15 is he's emotionally devastated still because of Ruby's reunion with her mother. And he's projecting that onto his own many lives and weird times. So he's thinking about Susan, he's thinking about the timeless child, he's thinking about Tecteun or whatever. I don't know. That's just a place they could take it, is that beyond Ruby now has to sort herself out, the Doctor's thinking, maybe I need to sort myself out at this point.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's kind of what they're kind of hinting at, isn't it? It was him saying it was a mistake to not go back to Susan. I mean, that's kind of a definitive thing, isn't it? So I think that's clearly when they want to shift it.
And God knows he doesn't want to take Ruby back to 2146 or whatever year that took place. Anything else? Because I am cooking out here.
I'm looking forward to Moffat coming back.
We haven't talked signpost, have we?
Oh, that was stupid.
The signpost.
I don't want to talk about the fucking signpost. The signpost is the stupidest thing. Signpost is a fucking waste. Man, it wasn't even there in the...
I think it embodies the extent to which we can say RTD has maybe whiffed like the human story elements of this, because that is played as this big, heartwarming, wholesome, emotional thing. And of course the answer to this huge mystery of why the fuck was she pointing, that had so much significance placed on it. And it's literally like the most what the fuck inducing, mystifying nonsense excuse for an emotional beat imaginable. Like, what? Like, just how? What? Who has ever named a child they left at a doorstep by walking a great distance away? And then, you know, obviously, you know, I don't need to rehash this. People do not listen to Who Cares for trite observations you could get on Twitter, right? But I think it's important that this...
Yeah, they do, but only on my episodes.
I think it's significant that this pivotal emotional beat is just something that is so just garbage and garbled, because it just poleaxes any hope of the episode making sense overall.
That's what I mean about... I don't want to talk about the signpost. The signpost is everything we've already been talking about. It's a what's the word I'm looking for here? Microcosm.
Yes.
It's fucking the only good thing. The only thing I have to hope for now is that, you know, Davies still hasn't written and filmed all of season 2 yet, so there's still time for him to change.
He has, okay? So he absolutely has.
Oh no. Dang, I didn't even have time to take a sip of my scalding hot coffee. I do actually have one nice thing to say about it at the end.
Oh, go on. Nice way to wrap up.
One little nice last note is that I've seen a lot of controversy on Twitter about this episode, about an element that we haven't even approached yet, which is that Kate Stewart appears to be having romantic feelings towards Ibrahim, one of her male underlings, which is on the one hand a serious power imbalance, and on the other hand is upsetting a lot of Kate fans who believed her to be queer. And the only thing I have to say about that is, God bless Russell T Davies for finally bringing back a proper unit dating controversy.
Hey! Wonderful.
Yeah. I can't even say it was a disappointment, because, I mean, Davies' finales, you know, it's Russian roulette, but in reverse. You know, 5 chambers, 1 empty.
I think it was still a disappointment. Like, there's one thing, there's a difference between expecting a bad finale and expecting the worst RTD finale of all time. Because I did not expect that, ever.
It exceeded all my expectations, is what I want to say.
Yes, that's the one way to put it.
Like I said, I'm an optimist, and I am always disappointed.
Disappointment and expectations. To disappoint, that ends the part of our Empire discussion with mirrors. That's the end of the main discussion between Gig, Mirrors, and I. Expectations. Well, the 3 of us watched the finale, as most of you listeners probably did, on TVs or computer screens. Maybe some of you watched it on a portable device, like the 15th Doctor did with Pyramids of Mars in this very episode. But these finale episodes, Legend and Empire, were also broadcast in cinema screens in the UK. What an experience. Seeing the 50th anniversary on the big screen in 3D is one of my very favourite Doctor Who memories. It was a truly fantastic experience. And some of the Doctor Who stories that make it to cinemas are clearly built for that experience in one way or another. And some of them just feel like a up-jumped experience, a regular TV visual and sound experience that's just in a cinema for whatever reason in the end. Alas, none of these Empire of Death screenings were in Australia or the USA, so neither Mirrors or I could make it to one, and for some strange reason, Gig didn't seem inclined, but some of our British friends did attend. You're about to hear a discussion Gig and I had with 2 of our pals, Virgil and Nilso in England, who did attend these cinema showings. Gig, where were you watching the finale when Virgil and Nilso were at the cinema?
Well, I was sat huddled over in front of my monitor, kind of watching in the dark in general awe and misery in a very dark room. But I was not the only person to watch it in a dark room, apparently.
Yes, Gig and I may have watched it in our homes, but the finale was also broadcast in British cinemas. So it was the day that Empire aired, right? So it was the week after Legend, but they aired the two of them together. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, both of them back to back.
While Gig and I didn't get to experience this, some of our friends did. Nilso and Virgil, also from the UK, experienced it in cinemas, and so I thought I would pick their brains a little bit to learn what that very unique experience was like. If you had to sum it up in a word, what word would it be?
Just a little bit shit, all hyphenated.
So, to back up there, were you familiar with the cinemas you went to like beforehand? Like, did you know what those cinemas were generally like, or did you have to go out of your way?
Mine was like 5 minutes away, I'd say. Not big travel.
Mine was only about 5-10 minutes away, and it was cinema I've been going to for most of my life. So it's not like the venue that was the problem. It was let's say it was the people.
So the cinemas are normally normal, but this was not a normal experience?
Yeah, pretty much.
As you both arrived, before the actual screening started, what was it like? What was happening like as you walked into the venue? What sort of people were there? How did that all go down?
Do you want to go first, Virgil?
Yours is a lot more interesting than mine. Mine was mostly just people in t-shirts, some fezzes about.
Well, you would never have guessed anything was like strange as you went in. It was just a very standard evening. I thought there wasn't very much foot traffic. Fair few people floating about in the foyer, nothing else. You could spot the odd fan floating here or there. Maybe a few as you came in, but other than that, the venue was just dead quiet.
Did you hear any chatter amongst the people there? Like, it's interesting to put that many fans in the same physical space. Could you overhear any weird talk of rumours or Doctor Who things in general, either of you?
It was just general people sort of keeping in their huddle groups.
Right.
There are a few people sort of near me that were, just talking about the general, like, what was your favourite episode of the season? How do you feel about Shooty? And it was all relatively positive stuff.
Yeah.
One person sort of saying they didn't really like Rogue that much, but everything else was sort of all right, except maybe Space Babies, which I would pretty much consider like the baseline opinion of a lot of people. But that's just my personal opinion.
So as you both actually went into like the actual cinema, like the actual room with the screen and everything, what was that like as you were actually going into the room with the fans you were going to be watching the episodes with?
At first, it was very quiet, but you could hear sort of a group of people further in, so I thought, okay, they must have already started letting people through. Then, as we got closer to the screening room, there was about 5 or 6 people there, and they were all what I would associate with, like, Doctor Who fandom. So you had someone dressed as David Tennant, you had someone dressed as Matt Smith, specifically like 14th Doctor David Tennant. So it was a pretty nice outfit. It was very well done. I don't know if it was exactly 1-for-1 in like accuracy, but it was certainly a you could tell what it was from a distance. And as we walked up to the front, they sort of spotted this group of people walking in, because they only were letting people in there a few at a time, just to. I think they might have been expecting that there'd be more people turning up.
Right.
So as we sort of got to the front, these people came up to us and said, Doctor Who fans, nice to meet you. And they sort of went through this whole routine. And it was quite a bizarre. I'm just sort of not really sure what to do. I'm just sort of looking at them and going, yeah, hello. Just sort of like, sort of giving it back a little bit, but not really like engaging too much. And I'm just sort of like, yeah, I'm also here. And I'm waiting for them to sort of turn back and start talking to their friends, but they start waving their sonic screwdrivers at me. They start spouting lines. I'm just like, okay, I was hoping they wouldn't be like this, because I never really expected it to be sort of weird or like fanish. That's not a real word. But I was just expecting it to be like normal people, sort of just like out on was it Sunday?
Wouldn't it have been like Friday night? Because this was coinciding with the live iPlayer drop.
Yeah, Friday night.
It would have been Friday, yeah.
What sort of lines were they saying at you?
They were just reading a sonic screwdriver and sort of saying, I've detected Doctor Who fans in the area. And we were like, haha, yeah, I guess so. And he was like, well, you've come to the right place, my friends. It was just the most surreal experience. It was like I'd sort of stepped into this microcosm of what I expect fandom to be, but not like just basic general average fandom. It was like perfectly distilled cringe.
Was it like walking into a convention a little bit, like the atmosphere they were bringing?
Yeah.
Right. So at this point, they're just being strange and awkward and saying lots of Doctor Who-y things to you, right?
Yeah, but they're not being like aggressive or like confrontational.
Yeah.
They're just being slightly awkward. You know, they're not. There's no harm to them. They're just there to sort of experience it the same way everyone else is, but they're just involved with the fandom in just such a different way, which is completely fine. I don't think there's any problem with that at that stage, anyway.
Were most other people like you seeming a little bit confused by how these guys were acting, or were they like the majority, the sort of person there?
Everyone was sort of like not looking at them and like hoping that they wouldn't look at them. There were only about 4 or 5 other people that had come through with us. It was me and a friend that had gone there, and they were just sort of looking at them like, oh my god, what is these people were like normies, not in like a derogatory way, but they were just like casual viewers. They must have just thought, oh, let's go to the cinema. There's something going on tonight. We'll just go and watch in the cinema. That might be a laugh, like I thought. But they were just mortified. I think they just had nothing really to say. They were the people who were standing outside, these cosplayers. They were starting to try and get like attention from the main crowd that was there. Not aggressively sort of trying to get attention, but just sort of going, you know, we're here, hello. And they started saying, oh, if you want to have a selfie with the Doctor, come and stand with us and we'll get like a group selfie and it'll be fun. And, you know, there's no like aggressive tone to it. There's no like coercion. They're only like maybe mid to late teens. So it's nothing strange, but it's this look of derision from the people in the crowd was just hilarious. Eventually they sort of let us in and we just went in, sat down. They sat down right at the front, very first row. I was right at the back, nice centre view, and very far back. And they, for a while, they just sort of kept quiet, and it didn't get quite weird until like halfway through, towards the end.
Right. So did anything happen before Legend started playing, or is that basically up to where Legend starts?
No, the whole thing just turned on all of a sudden. There was no like lead up video, or there was no advert break or anything like that. It just went, lights are off, everyone shut up, and the episode started within about 15 seconds, and that just straight in.
Oh, I got 20 minutes of adverts beforehand.
Really?
Yeah.
Just like regular adverts, like it was a movie?
It was like weird like targeted ones towards sci-fi fans. So it was like one of them was like at a convention, and it was like it was like normal people in a hotel, and then people dressed up in like outfits, and people going like, oh, who are these weirdos, and like stuff like that. And then it was like another one that was like sci-fi related. It felt a bit targeted, to be honest.
When Legend actually played, I'm curious, there's a couple of moments in Legend, like when the Colonel dies in the time window and like the time window breaks, there's a really big like bass drop. Did that sound cool in the cinema? Like, was the sound good, or did the sound feel weird and not mixed right for a cinema? Like, what was the sound like in general for you two?
I was expecting much more of a bass to it.
Yeah, same.
It was it sounded all right. It didn't sound like mind-boggling. It was very much like average, which was quite disappointing because I was quite looking forward to hearing like the title theme in the cinema. I thought it'd be less bassy, but it was just kind of average. I don't think it's the cinema fault. It might have just been the actual thing itself, because the cinema's usually quite a good cinema. It's not like a 10 out of 10, but it's never been like bad for audio quality. I've never had like a problem in the cinema other than the film itself.
I was in like a Dolby laser one as well, and I was expecting like actual like surround sound, but it was all right for Legend. But the second part was a bit like muted and stuff. It sounded a bit strange. I don't know if it was the same for you, Nelson.
Well, that's disappointing.
There were a few bits where the TARDIS is making the weird noise towards the end, and that had a good, nice little bit of bass to it.
Yeah, same.
You know, like the creaking noise, I guess you could say. But everything else was very flat, which was quite strange.
That's weird. I wonder if they didn't do like a separate cinema mix or something, if that was just like the TV audio playing through.
I think that's what it was, yeah.
If I'd seen the iPlayer pop up on the screen, I would not have been surprised. And general slayers.
Did it look good? Like both episodes, did they look good on the big screen? Like, were you impressed by how they looked, or did it seem worse than it would have seemed on a laptop? Like, did the visuals play differently at all to seem large?
I don't think so. I think it looked pretty nice. It
looked alright, yeah.
I definitely remember thinking, oh, that looks quite crisp, actually. I don't think it was any different. I think it might have just been the size of the screen, how far away you sat, that kind of stuff.
The Mel bike scene at the start of Empire, that seemed like it would be like a fun cinema scene, big action scene.
I don't even remember that scene. The whole episode's sort of blurred out from my head, other than the spoon scene.
I have a small question about Legend before we move on. Because when this cinema screening happened, Legend had already aired like the previous week, and presumably most people would have already seen that bit. So the whole first half of this screening is not new material. Was there any like slight feeling of like boredom in the audience because people had already seen it?
Yeah, definitely.
The person that I'd been to see it with hadn't seen it, so they said, we'll just watch the whole thing in the cinema. They didn't know that Sutekh was coming back, and I sort of said, I think you might like it, because they've seen Classic Who. And I said to them, they said, how the hell did you manage to keep that quiet, like, all week? And I was saying, I didn't know if you'd even remember that. And he said, oh my god, I love that episode. I can't believe that you didn't mention anything. I'm just like, well, why would I? Because that's the point of watching it in the cinema, you keep that completely secret. But they did laugh at Sutekh. They said, that's atrocious. And I said, yeah, it pretty much is. But I was dead bored throughout the first half. I'm just sort of, the people in the cinema didn't really seem to take them in the first part or the second part, but the first part was it was sort of like everyone's like twiddling their fingers, I imagine, just waiting for it to end so they can get to the actual bit why they're here.
Yeah, that's what it felt like in mine as well. Definitely restless, although people did sit up a bit for the Sutekh reveal.
I did hear someone in the distance going, ooh. It's like a general sound of interest, like somewhat, and I thought that was quite funny.
Speaking of funny, were there any laugh moments? Because I know, like, going to see Doctor Who in the cinema, I guess one of the more socially acceptable reactions people can have is kind of laughing at shit. Like, I know that's kind of a thing Moff would play to with his cinema screening episodes, but were there any, like, laughter moments? Did the audience laugh at anything?
When Kate died for me, that was a surprising one.
Are we talking just for Legends, or are we talking for both?
No, whenever, like, both episodes, like...
Morris got a lot of laughs, but he was when they all turned to stone or sand or whatever, they laughed at that. People laughed at Sutekh dying, which I don't think was the correct intention or the creative decision behind that. Lots of laughs, but like derisive laughter. They liked all of the who was the person that Kate said, oh, I love that person, they're lovely.
Davina McCall?
Yeah, that was it. That got a laugh, and Morris's response to that, where he sort of like just sort of like sneers at it, that got a laugh. Now that was probably the biggest laugh of the whole thing. And also, for some reason, have you ever dreamt that you're an ambulance? For some reason,
the ending got a laugh there in mine actually as well.
Virgil, do you mean the ending of Legend or Empire?
Empire, yeah. It was when I was named after a road. That got a big laugh.
Oh, that said at that.
Yeah, and when the doctor was crying at the end, that got a lot of laughter as well, actually.
Sounds brutal.
Complete opposite.
What happened between Legend and Empire? Like, it didn't just cut right to Empire, right? What happened in the middle?
No, there was a 15-minute break between, but the episode ended, and then there was no like fade in. It was just literally like a fast cut to
an awkward rise up.
You will be waiting 15 minutes, and then there'll be a special message, and everyone sort of went, "Oh shit." Some people left, and some obviously came back afterwards. But this is when the people that we mentioned previously just sort of jumped into action. And they were standing at the front of the room, and for some reason, decided to start trying to get audience interaction going. So they stood at the front and said, right, well, everyone, we hope you enjoyed that first episode. Now we're going to try and get some audience interaction going. And if you like David Tennant, we want you to shout out Allons-y. And if you like Matt Smith, we want you to shout out Geronimo. So they said, okay, everyone get that. No response. And then they say, oh, okay, so David Tennant, shout Geronimo or Allons-y. And then nothing happened. It was pitch quiet. You could hear a pin drop. I was just like, oh my God, please, no, don't do this to me. I'm going to start laughing. I can't, please, just someone say anything. And then they started again. They're saying, when you like David Tennant, say Allons-y. And again, dead silence. And I'm like, okay, so they're going to hopefully get the hint and sort of shut up and sit back down, because there's another 10 minutes going on the screen. I'm like, oh my God, please. Just anything happen, literally anything. And the person behind me and in front of me just starting to laugh. And then they start moving up the audience aisles, or the cinema aisles. And they're moving aisle by aisle and like pointing at people with their sonic screwdrivers and saying, what do you think? What's your favourite? And the person's sort of like, I don't know. Leave me alone. And they're just pointing further and further down the individual aisles saying, what's your... And it's like, oh my God, please don't come up here, because I'm right at the back. I'm like, if there was any further forward, they'd be coming up to me and asking me, and I don't know what I even do. I don't know what... My flight or fight instinct would kick in. And it's getting closer and closer, and it's like shouting catchphrases at people. I know it's a bit of a basic comparison to draw it to, but it was very much Sheldon Cooper coded, I think. With the sort of just walking up to people and shouting Bazinga at people. It was horrific, and people were just like, oh my God, what the fuck are they doing? What is going on? These people just have no concept of, like, personal space whatsoever. And when they got back to the front, after stopping about 4 or 5 hours in front of me, and I'm just, oh my thank God for that. They were like, well, thanks for that, everyone. That was really handy. If you want to have photos at the end of us dressed as the Doctor, you can come down to the front and we'll do some photos. And I'm like, no, literally no one is going to do that. You are delusional. And people laughed at that. That was probably the biggest laugh of the night. And I was just like, oh my God, I had no idea. And the guy sat next to me was like, I wouldn't have known what I would have done if they'd have come up front, they'd come up to us here. And then the episode started about 5 minutes afterwards, but I was just sort of leaning back, crouched in my seat almost, like, please don't get eye contact with me. It was awful.
Did you get the Millie Gibson did a message, right?
Yes, she did.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was the biggest. Okay, how do I say it? You go first, Virgil. I'm trying to figure out how to say this.
Oh, it was the most interesting thing of the night for me. It was just the level of disinterest. It looked like she was forced to do it. It was amazing. People applauded at the end, but I don't know whether they actually enjoyed it.
No one applauded. I had someone say, oh, that was a bit shit. But it was the most... I don't think it was phoned in. You could definitely say it was like non-interested or like not really bothered. But it was just like general platitudes of, hi, thanks for turning up. You're going to see both episodes now, which made me think that that was a weird choice of phrase. Surely you'd say like the second or the newest episode. Yeah. But I guess they might have initially wanted to run the trailer beforehand.
Yeah.
Which would have been fine. I wouldn't have minded starting with that as like a cold open for the Legend of Ruby Sunday. I think that might have been quite a nice idea. But it was very much I've just been brought into the studio for 5 minutes to rattle off something, literally anything off the top of my head. They probably didn't even write a script for it and then just sent it right out.
So how, after that Empire started, how did that go for both of you?
It was grim. I knew they'd do the fake out death right at the beginning, and then obviously you know they're going to get brought back because all of them died. They're not going to end the season with Kate dead and like this little child dead. They're obviously going to like Deus Ex it. like every sort of season finale does nowadays. So the stakes for that were immediately like flat because you know they're going to come back, so it doesn't really matter if they're dead.
Did people like groan or anything when at any of these moments that didn't work?
Yeah,
I just heard whispers of Avengers when that bit happened, like, oh, Avengers. So it was like people already caught on like straight away what it was.
Lots of like general sort of like, oh, there's no like gasping or like, oh my god, like shock. It was just oh, which is not the response that you want for killing people. The only like death that got a general sort of reaction was the guy who died in the time window. That was like oh, he's dead, how did that happen kind of thing. But there was no real like general interest. It was just like oh, I guess he's dead. There was someone shouting, don't go behind the TARDIS when just as he walked round, and I was like I wouldn't have expected someone to have shouted out at that point, but it's neither here nor there.
At the climax, I think when Ncuti was going, oh, if you add death to death, it give life. I seem to recall you said something about like, did someone react to that?
Yeah, someone laughed at that. That was like a Rich Evans laugh from RLM, but it was just I heard someone groan as well. Quite a few people did actually.
Yeah, same in mine.
There was quite a lot of groaning at the there's a lot of bemused sort of laughter at the spoon scene. Lots of stuff during they're roping Sutekh up, I think. Is that what happened? I don't even remember.
Yeah.
They attached an intelligent rope to him and drag him around.
And they had the psychic gloves came back, which was a thing.
And then what about the reveal of Ruby's mum and the whole we invested over significance stuff and the whole thing her just being normal? Any reactions to that?
Just laughter in mine. Just like, what is this?
Derisive laughter, like, it was quite scathing, I thought. And I was really, really expecting her to be non-receptive to the whole thing and sort of go, oh, okay. And have it like a cynical ending almost. I don't know why I expected that. I thought they'd just go against what everyone was expecting and do like a legitimate subversion of expectations, not in like a silly subversion way, like the meme is, but I thought they'd legitimately try and go against the sort of Rose Tyler, like family comfort kind of thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where they sort of play it off as like a positive thing, but then I thought they'd go negative a bit, and it'd be like it doesn't matter that your real mum doesn't love you because you have your other family here through Carla and Sherry. And I thought that's what the ending would be. I'm
kind of curious, like, what was the moment the lights went up again, I guess? Like, the moment the episode was finished. I guess you have that moment of silence before everyone just gets up and leaves, I guess. Or I guess when the credits start rolling, like, what was the mood in the room, like, for both of you, like, when it was all over?
Big grin, to be honest. It was just people sort of like getting up quietly and going out. I did go outside. I did hear someone say something like, "Oh, I almost cried at the end." Well, that was like the only positive thing I heard. It mostly felt a bit like people were a bit like they've wasted the time. For me, it was pretty much the same. Everyone stayed seated until the end of the titles because I thought there was going to be a Christmas lead-in, like the Doctor will return in whatever episode, Joy to the World, I think it is. Yeah, I was expecting a trailer. Or a trailer, or just like a little title card, like classic, or they used to do in some finales. Or even just a general The Doctor will return at Christmas kind of thing. But after that, we were down the ramp quite quick to try and avoid the people at the front sort of like talking to us. And the general consensus I heard from people was that was a waste of time, that was shit. I wish I hadn't bothered. What was all that about? So how did they kill Sutekh? There's nothing positive apart from maybe one or two things about the sort of shock leaving of Ruby. I was like, I wasn't expecting that. So it was like a 1 a.m. at this point, wasn't it, or thereabouts? Yeah. Because we'd gone through midnight. Were people tired? Yeah, you could definitely say people were just like done with it. But people were done with it at the beginning of Empire. I think people just wanted to go home then. I wouldn't have minded if they'd have just shown the finale. They didn't need to. I like the idea of them showing both, but I would have done it as an omnibus format. So I'd have done it as like a
you take out the ending of Legend and then just merge it all into one. I'd have watched it in that, and I thought that'd have been quite cool.
Did your 14th Doctor guy do anything strange at the very end?
Oh yeah, they as we were leaving, they sort of jumped in front of the whole queue of people. Because the way the cinema works is that there's an entrance right towards the right, but it's right at the front of this viewing area, so you have to walk like the entire length of the room to leave the room, if that makes sense. Because it's in like a little tunnel leading up to the main foyer. And they jumped in front of everyone as we were leaving, and they were starting saying, well, that was great, wasn't it? And they're sort of trying to get audience going again. And they were like, if you want to have some photos with us, come out and we'll do some selfies. And there were like people almost like openly mocking them at this point, like pointing at them and laughing. And they people started walking past them, sort of heading towards the exit, and then they ran around in front of that again and started the whole conversation again, saying, come and take some selfies with us, please. And they did that 3 more times afterwards, and because they were starting to get like, not touching with the crowd, but they were trying to physically bar people from leaving without looking or talking to them. Almost, you would not have been able to have left the room without walking over these people, and that's when it sort of got really quite frustrating, because these people are, even though they're just blocking the path, they're not being aggressive and they're not being coercive or anything, but it's just you don't do that kind of thing. There's one fine line between going there and watching it for the experience, and then there's one thing of like physically stopping people from leaving and being like weirdly touchy. Like this guy who was the 14th Doctor, he might have been like a cinema usher for the cinema. I've not been back since, so I don't know if he's like a regular staff or if he's just like a guy. But it was so bizarre, and people were like getting frustrated by it. It was just unlike anything I've ever seen in a cinema before. I've seen videos of people fighting in a cinema before, but I've never seen anything like that in person. But it was just awful.
So, not a ringing endorsement from either of you?
No, it was splendid. I loved it. 10 out of 10.
And Virgil, you were able to escape like unscathed, unlike Nilso.
Yeah, mine was pretty boring. I'm a bit disappointed, to be honest. I wish I would have had Nilso's experience, just so it would have been like something to feel. Do you know what I mean?
Wow. Gig, do you have any last things to ask, or are you kind of catatonic after hearing that, like I am?
I'm good, I think. Do you have anything else?
No. That was very interesting, both of you. Thank you for enlivening us with your tales of the cinema experience. I'm guessing if the season 2 finale is in cinemas, you're not going to attend?
Oh, I'm going. You literally cannot stop me.
I'm kind of tempted, yeah. Just to experience what Nilso experienced, and I go every week.
Seeing the crowds dwindle one week after another, fewer and fewer people coming in.
There weren't that many people in there. There was quite a big cinema screening, but it was only like maybe 20, 30 people. And it was very, 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 it was very spread out.
Oh, really? Mine was fully packed.
I wasn't expecting the whole thing to be filled, but it felt very last moment and sort of like put together. I was expecting to see like cutouts and stuff, but it was bare.
So it seems quite regional dependent how packed the screening was then.
Yeah, probably. Mine had 3 different screens like set up because it was like that full.
Wow.
We had 2, and I was in the one that was probably the biggest screen for it, and it was probably the biggest crowd. The secondary screening was in a horrible little room, and I'm really glad we were booked for that initially, but we said, can we go to the other one? And they said it's slightly more expensive, but that's fine. Only a couple of quid more. All
right, good stuff. We'll call it there. That was very interesting. Thank you guys for telling us what that was like. Gig and I got to live through you for that half hour. So that was great.
Yeah, cheers, guys.
Now, Virgil and Nilso have left us, and Gig as well, and it's going to be myself and Tyler discussing the music of the finale as the final part of this overall discussion on Empire of Death. The two of us talked about the music for The Legend of Ruby Sunday together, so now we're going to talk about the music for the actual finale together. Tyler is a fan of the music for this episode, as he said in the Legend of Ruby Sunday conversation. Did you, Tyler, have a preference for the music between these episodes? Like, did you prefer Legends or prefer Empires? Or was it much for muchness there?
Legend for sure.
Okay. Well,
Why are you the other way around?
yeah, I think I am actually. Empire is more music though, I think.
Yeah, it does. It's doing a lot of sonically different stuff to that surprises me actually. Sorry to linger on it. There's a lot of stuff in the Legend of Ruby Sunday that I assumed that you would really love for the same reasons that I do.
Well, I think Empire has a lot more throwbacks, which is that's the syrup to me. That's the honey to me. Neurons connecting. I remember thing from other thing.
Yeah.
That's the good stuff for me. On that note, the first bit of music we'll listen to. There's a couple of variations here in the bit I'll play for everyone. I don't think this music is like an homage to Boom, but sonically it's very similar to the stuff I loved in Boom, which is like the male choir, religious kind of sounding music. So some bits this plays is when 15 takes the monitor and he works out the memory TARDIS is made of memories early on in the episode. It plays a little bit later where Sutek's saying he's hit on the TARDIS forever, and we get Sutekh on the TARDIS in the vortex, and then he goes like invisible. And it also plays when they go to 2046 and Mel is really freaking out and Ruby's pricking her blood. So this Boom-esque music plays a couple of times in the episode. Let's have a listen to it.
That male choir is like stereotypical evil religion, isn't it?
It is, but I love it so much. I really like that. I really, really like that.
I like it. Yeah, it works. It reminds me of what he was doing, Murray Gold was doing in The Good Man Goes to War. Do you see what I mean there?
Yes, yeah, 100%. I was just saying, I was in the Legend discussion, I was talking about how I was a hypocrite for expecting old music from Sagan. Now I feel like a hypocrite because in Legend I was saying, well, really, evil chanting for Sutekh, isn't that a little bit cliche? And here I'm getting like male choir, ominous stuff, and I'm just lapping it up. I can't make sense of myself here, but I absolutely love this music. It just works for me so well. I love it. And I like that it plays a lot in the episode. It's like a proper little motif running through it. I really like it.
Yeah, it's got a similar sort of noise to ancient Egypt invocations in film and TV. A sort of
yeah.
I don't know. I haven't got the evidence to back this up, but if you watch like The Mummy or Raiders of the Lost Ark, or and anything that deals with ancient Egypt in any kind of tangible sense, it tends to have this kind of. I think this kind of musical strain.
I'm very wary of our inability to discuss this well, but I think there's something to Empire. Well, Russell is maybe among us in that inability. Empire has that scene where 15 says cultural appropriation, and it's kind of like you laugh because you're like, yeah, pyramids, and then you think, wait, what does the Doctor mean by that? What does it actually mean?
Yeah,
I think there's something to like Pyramids of Mars is this is a bigger discussion than we can have right now. Pyramids of Mars is obviously playing around in some strange ways, but also Pyramids of Mars is channeling like Hammer horror more than it's channeling. I don't know what you can even. It's the same way that like if you make a fantasy movie, you put like an orchestral score on that, right? And that's completely ahistorical. There weren't orchestras in like the periods you're quasi adapting or whatever. But it's like in the 2024 audience, we associate orchestra and like cello music with Game of Thrones or whatever. And so like there's no actual history. There's no history to this, but it's like the connotations we all swirl together. The same way that like. That's really it's like it makes me think more of like a a Christian abbey of monks or something chanting or, making music together.
Yeah.
But you're totally right that sort of music is what you would get like in some modern schlocky music about ancient Egyptian gods fighting or whatever. You would hear that sort of chanting, which I assume, I'm not trained in ancient Egypt or everything, I assume has nothing to do with any sort of music going on in ancient Egypt. But we have that association. I guess it's just saying more about us as our listeners and, viewers in 2024 than anything else. But that's kind of interesting, that kind of soup of connotations, yeah. I can't really segue neatly, but I was vaguely just talking about memories clashing together and like ahistorical memory and whatnot. That kind of gets us to the memory TARDIS scene.
Oh, I think that works. You should have trusted yourself more on that one.
Yeah, it doesn't work. So like 10 minutes in the episode when the memory TARDIS gets activated and they successfully get it flying, this is the music there. Let's hear that.
My computer doesn't seem to want to play this one, but that's fine. I've already heard it. I know how I feel about it. There's a lot of Sam Watts here.
Yes.
Mr. Smith fanfare. Lots of Sarah Jane Adventures vibes in the memory TARDIS as a whole, including the set. I like the fluid insertion of 15's theme.
I like that bit.
I like that bit.
I don't like the stuff before. It's like when we were complaining about the Carla guitar happy stuff in Legend. It's just too, I don't want to sound like a curmudgeon, but it's just too happy for me. It's too jaunty. It's just, gross. I'm not a fan.
Yeah, it is. Yes, it is jaunty. Yeah. It's that 15 bit is really clever. I think it's really clever of Murray to use that.
Yeah, that bit's good.
That cowboy-esque, fast-paced, staccato thing.
Yeah.
It slots really neatly into almost anything, as we've discovered. I'm surprised that he's managed to create something like that again in the vein of like 11's theme.
Yeah.
Maybe some bits of 12.
We're talking about 15's successes when we're saying how good that theme is. Let's listen to one of his failures. This is the music when he has a little sob into space in the memory TARDIS.
It's allowing space for Shooty's acting to do the talking. I wish that Murray would have stepped in a bit more in this case.
I feel sorry for Shooty there because he's getting asked to do something really. It's one of those. It's like there's that scene later in the episode where he's like, "The Ood sphere, welcome back to the Ood," and I don't think Shooty does a good job there. But I also feel like I'm not sure it's possible to do a good job there. Maybe some actors could have tried and maybe succeeded a bit more. But I think that's just the being asked, you need to go and scream out into space really dramatically. Like that's a losing proposition.
Yeah.
I don't begrudge Shooty anything. I don't think that scene works, like for me. But Murray, maybe he could have given him a bit more. I don't know. It kind of reminds me of The Impossible Planet, not in the actual music, but just in the we have like a one string instrument doing a sad thing, which was you get that in Impossible Planet too. It's totally different music here, but it's a kind of similar texture.
Yeah. I hadn't made that connection with The Impossible Planet. The one that it reminds me of, same era, it was Name of the Doctor is doing a lot of that stuff too.
Oh yeah, Name of the Doctor, like the scene where Matt cries receiving the letter of Trenzalore stuff.
Oh, what an amazing score there!
I think that's some of Murray's best music in the show, and like,
I
think Matt's also. I think that I think the script is kind because
Yeah.
that's not being asked, you need to wail out of Clara's door. That's being asked, I presume the script is like saying cry however you want to, Matt. Quietly cry.
Crying to a friend. Yeah.
So it's much easier for an actor what he's doing there. But the music is also giving him so much. Here it's like Shooty's being asked to act in a very, well, I assume the script is saying he cries out
Yeah.
into space, which is much harder to do subtly. So it's like, everything is going, everything that worked in that Name of the Doctor scene is not working here. But I don't feel like I feel like it's the writer's fault mostly, more than Murray and the actor. But yeah, anyway, there's another scene that I don't think works. Well, there's a few in this episode. The next scene I don't think works is when 15 gets a spoon from the Fleabag lady. Here's some of the music for that scene.
So iconic.
The bit at the end sounds to me like, you know, like in a video game, like if your character gets an item or they like level up or something,
Yeah.
and they'll just be like a little brass, dun, 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 like in Super Mario or something. That's exactly, it sounds like 15's theme moves into like, you've leveled up 15, you've acquired the rare spoon. Yeah.
There's this one. It has a earlier I said that in the Legend of Ruby Sunday discussion I said that there was a piece of music that sounded like morning TV opening. This one has like a like an advertisement kind of feeling. Do you know what I mean there?
Yeah.
It's that there's I think I think this is a result kind of I don't think much work has been put into, much thought has been put into this, because I in many ways I suppose there's not much I suppose that a composer can score to this. So I can't entirely begrudge Murray Gold for this, but this is, to be plain about it, it's just not, this is not good enough, really.
Well, the next bit of music we both like a lot, and I like the scene as well. So this is, the monitor is like flickering in the memory TARDIS, and we start getting 73 yards Roger Ap Williams stuff on the screen. And the music we get, we've got it elsewhere in season 1, but the first time we got this was when we're in the evil Carla timeline in Church and Ruby Road, and 15's like, they took the baby. He's like all husky saying that. This is the same bit of music. Like, it's a new variation, but it's the same bit of music. Let's listen to that. It's really good.
I love this one. It's among my favourites of this season.
Yeah, it's good.
Real sense of urgency to it. I love the synth. It reminds me actually of what Murray was doing. Maybe you'll know what I mean here. Very specifically in Series 9. I'm thinking of episodes like The Magician's Apprentice, which is familiar, in scenes like, I can't say that it's specifically this scene, but the planes have stopped. A lot of the action in Invasion and Inversion. I think in Series 9, Murray's doing a lot of this synth drama building climax kind of music.
Very Hans Zimmer kind of stuff he started getting into.
Yeah.
Around 2014, 15, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that kind of has a it's like a remix of Matt Smith, isn't it? It's a remix of Eleven's thing.
Yeah.
In a sense.
The next bit of music, well, you know me, I like Old Thing. I recognize Old Thing. That makes me happy. So I really like the next bit of music where we're getting some of the 73 yards music kind of reprised, like as they're walking around in 2046. And that's just cool because it's not like we're in 73 yards, but we're in a setting informed by 73 yards. This is like if Ruby hadn't thwarted Roger Ap William, this is something that, could have come to pass, the DNA tests, and then of course Sutek's destroyed 2046 as well. I like how that stuff kind of works. So this is some music from there.
I like this. Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
I can enjoy it now. I was on first viewing. I was worried that what's going to happen? How are we going to retcon this?
Yeah, me too.
How are we going to retcon that beautiful episode? But no, it's nice. It's like a faintly remembered variation of that score.
Yeah. I like 73 yards. It was probably my 73 yards and Dot and Bubble were my favorite scores this year. So it was just really nice to get. So because 73 yards has a couple of iconic bits of music in it. That rising horror bit is one of them, but there's other bits of music in Yards that's iconic too. This next little clip is kind of the woman wailing kind of bit, also from Yards. Let's listen to that. It's also good.
Lovely rise to a crescendo there.
Nice rise, yeah. They're just walking around 2046 there, but it's like musically we're kind of flashing back to Yards, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it's nice pieces of music. Yeah, not nice that. Yeah, they do feel faintly remembered. They feel vaguely remembered.
Yeah, I guess on that throwbacky note, when we get Carol the Bells in this next bit we'll listen to, that's I guess a throwback to Church and to the Devil's Chord. So this is when the snow is falling as the DNA test is the plot is so weird in this scene. So in 2046, well, in Roger Ap Williams' reign, he mandates like DNA tests. And so Ruby's mum is still alive in this timeline and she gets her DNA tested or whatever. And so, but she doesn't have a DNA tested before. And let's not think about it too much. Mel's also getting possessed in this scene. So it's like a distorted version of Carol or the Bells. And it's a cool mix of sound design and music. I quite like this. Let's listen to that.
I'm not sure. Maybe you can elucidate this. I'm not sure whether that reverb, that like bass in the background is whether that's part of the score here, whether that's part of the remix of Carol of the Bells, or whether that's sound design for the time window separately of this.
Sound design, but it fits in really well musically. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Sure. It does. Yeah. Yeah. Really wonderfully. Yeah. Why don't you? I've got something to say sort of tangentially on this. So why don't you tell me what you think of this?
Well, there's a few things. One, Russell's like talked about why Carol of the Bells is neat, like in the context of the Ruby story. It's because Carol of the Bells is I don't know if creepy is quite the right word, but it's not a wholesome. It's a very, like, he's talked about pop music has a real aggression to it, and that's part of why Spice Girls work so well.
Yeah.
That's very true. I mean, I agree with them a lot, but also something like Carol of the Bells is very, aggressive is the wrong word, but there's a real actual commanding power. There's a kind of hypnotic power to it. I find really alluring, and Russell does as well. And I think Ruby already has her own big multi-layered great theme, but she's also having this iconic bit of Christmas music associated with it. I think works really well because there's such an odd tone to Carol of the Bells. It's not really happy. It feels very epic, feels very reductive, but it feels huge. Like it feels very like there's a huge thing being contained within it, which is part of why some of Empire didn't work for me. Is remember when Maestro was talking about like there's a secret song buried in her soul?
Yes, I do.
She's all confused about that sort of stuff, and that doesn't. It's not really followed up in the finale in any way. As cool as it is to get Carol of the Bells again and the snow falling again, it doesn't really go anywhere. But musically, it's a fun experience. And then we move into Sutekh's music at the end there, which is a lot. But I really like this version of Carol, getting punctuated by the sound effects What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I like this distorted Carol of the Bells. I don't have so much to say about this. This works for me. You know, it's a tried and true piece of music. I like the Murray spin. I find the secret song stuff so disappointing.
Yeah.
Really disappointing. Because I invested that with significance. I put stock in that.
Yeah.
And why set Murray Gold up with a chance to do an interesting musical beat and never pay it off?
Yeah.
It's one of the so many questions that I'd like to ask Russell T Davies. I love that Sutekh music at the end. Really evocative of Series 2, like we've been talking about.
Yeah. Next up, so this is when Ruby is doing a big epic walk over to Sutekh. Shooty 15's been greened. Like, we had a throwback to Pyramids of Mars VFX with Sutekh, like green, I don't know how to describe this, green energy torturing him. So after that, Ruby's walking over with the monitor, find the mother's name. She's going to show Sutekh her mother's name. This is the music as she's walking over to do that. And then, she drops it. But yeah, this is the music as she's walking over there.
I love that the chanting feels more frantic this time. It matches Sutekh's childish, gimme, gimme, gimme kind of energy. I like that.
It's like a double time chant at the start. Yeah, that's really cool. I love the big, it's religious sounding again. It just feels like pure defeat to me, that kind of second half there. Like,
yeah, it's cool. Yeah.
15's writhing on the ground and Ruby's like seemingly giving up. And it feels like this big, huge, epic sense of defeat. Music sells that really well. Of course, we know they're all just going to play a trick on Sutekh, and the music kind of gets weirdly jaunty towards the end.
Of course, yeah.
But I really like that sense of defeat. I think that was really well sold.
Yeah, of course, that's what happens. Of course,
yeah.
Of course, that's what happens. I wish I could this stuff in these climactic moments. I wish I could maybe one day. Okay, I wish I could. In my mind, disassociate it from what happens in this episode, but I can't, and that's at the moment. That's the truth of it. I struggle to. It's a shame.
The next bit of music is one of the few times Murray has failed for me, and it's not really his fault. It's just the scene is such a misfire to me that the music can't lipstick on a pig it enough for me.
Yeah.
Even though I like the music in a vacuum here, it just the scene really doesn't work for me at all. So the music doesn't work for me just because everything's not working. But it's the whistle scene. So Ruby, intelligent rope on Sutekh. 15 blows the whistle. The TARDIS switches sides. So it's a big version of 15's theme. And you can hear 15 whistling throughout it. Let's listen to that.
Let me separate it from the scene for a moment. This it is a great climactic Doctor theme. It's nice that we have a variation of 15's theme now that kind of goes through all the motions of the theme rapidly in rapid succession.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, I wish I could feel attached to it more, and I would if it was surrounded contextually by better storytelling. I really hate this scene. I feel really viscerally disgusted by it in a way that I haven't since Series 12. I can't separate the scene from the music from the scene, unfortunately, at the moment. But I'm sure that if we do ever get a soundtrack, I'm sure that I'll enjoy this music in isolation.
I like that we finally get. I don't think it's really since that concert where this theme was first unveiled, we've really heard a big full-throated version where we get the bit like in a big proper full way.
Yeah.
So it was very exciting to finally get that bit actually playing at length. But it's like playing when they're awkwardly trying to attach rope to the TARDIS, and it's just not much is really going on.
Yeah.
The music is great, but it's just one of those rare moments where it's kind of incongruous. And I think I can see the strings too much in the scene. Basically, it's where like the music is doing everything it can to sell you triumph, and this is earned, and this is great. And the scene itself is so inexplicable, but whatever. Like you said, if we ever get a soundtrack, then we can enjoy it more freely.
Yes.
The next bit of music, I've worked out where I recognize this. Sometimes I struggle. Sometimes my brain goes, this from somewhere. This is from somewhere. You don't know where, but it's from somewhere. I worked out where this is from. But let's not say that first. First, let's listen to it.
Sure. Okay.
This is the Death to Death Triumph. Sutekh's ripping the time vortex. Ibrahim, the modern one, is back to life, and he's holding Kate's hand, and then all that sort of stuff. Death to Death Triumph moment. This is the music from there. Let's hear it.
Okay. Before you tell me what you think of this, this might be musically related to. Let me tell you what I think. We'll see if we sync up.
Okay.
I think this stuff reminds me of the Series 3 finale, The Last of the Time Lords, the stuff with reversing time. So there's elements of that, I think, especially in the trumpet. But the other thing that it reminds me of more prominently is Last Christmas, Series 8.
Interesting.
Not the Last Christmas, not the main, that main melody, but the kind of the climactic moments. Say, I don't know,
the bit the Starbase used, the
big Santa moments, or no, not the bit the Starbeast and Wild Beyonder used. No, that's a separate melody.
Right.
There are climactic moments in Last Christmas, I think, including Santa with the sleigh, and there are a few moments. There are a few moments that kind of use a piece of music similar to this, but not the same. It's just it's very kind of in. I don't think it's that. Maybe you're about to prove me wrong. I don't think in this case it's that there's something that this is riffing off. I think it's just that Marigold has a particular style for music.
If he's trying to do a big triumphant thing, it's going to sound like a big triumphant thing. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So what was it for you?
Well, I had a first realization, and then that folded into a second realization. My first one was, this sounds like the bit. Well, like 15, 12 was a very long bit of like theme music with lots of different parts to it. There's a bit towards like the last third, if you like listen to A Good Man off the Series 8 soundtrack, where it kind of does a very similar kind of rising triumphant thing. And so I thought I solved it there. And then I kept listening to this Death to Death music, and I was going, that's not quite it, is it? There's something else it reminds me of. And what I worked out it was the Doctor's theme, not from Series 1 or 2 or 3, the River Song, Silence in the Library, Forest of the Dead version, when he's off to save River, there's a bit specifically in that which is super similar. It's like it's very, very similar rising thing.
Yes.
And that's reprised
quite a bit. It's reprised in Dr. Widow Wardrobe, and it's most iconically, it's when 11 gets the regeneration energy juice from the crack in Time of the Doctor. Never tell me the rules. We get like a very, very similar bit of music, which is like a new variation on that Series 4 theme thing.
Yeah.
It's very it's very, 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 very similar.
Yes.
So
yes, that is, yeah, you're totally right.
that's what I think that's the actual, I think he's actually doing a kind of variation on that there. But I also think he's done a lot of music like this before, which might be what you're identifying in other episodes. So it's yeah.
Yeah, I think that might be the case. I also wonder whether what you identified with 12's theme, maybe that's what I associated with Last Christmas. Maybe that's what I was hearing there.
Could be, yeah. But even all aside what it's referencing or what it's similar to, it's a nice bit of music. Like, it's very triumphant.
It is good music, yeah.
This is the bit of music I think people remember a lot from Empire of Death. Remember the da-na-na-na-na-na when Ibrahim came back to life? Iconic, happy music, nice. The scene is kind of silly, but it's not. I don't hate the scene the way I hate the whistle scene. I just think it's kind of silly in the way the Last of the Time Lords reversing everything is silly. But it's nice enough scene, and so it's very nice music. It's a memorable bit of the episode. It's not the only bit of the episode where life is restored. This next bit of music is when our Fleabag spoon lady gets her baby back and 15's babbling on about welcome back to the Ood. Let's listen to that.
I don't have an awful lot to say about this one. I think it kind of, it serves a purpose, does the job. What I do really like about it is that there's what sounds like a choir doing a sort of high pitched like violin sort of sound, and then into a violin in that same time, which is really interesting. That's very cool.
And then it ends on the male choir, like from earlier as well. It's a whole little journey, that bit of music. It's quite nice.
Yeah.
I think it's a random guys. Everything to do with Spoon Lady I find quite strange, but I like that bit of music. Some more music. When Sutekh dies and 15's doing his, I'll put it this way, I'm never going to forget this dialogue. He just wrote some unforgettable dialogue in this episode when 15's doing, and therefore ipso facto, you are death, I equal life. I don't want to kill you. Despite this episode showing me the episode where I killed you in the 70s, I don't want to kill you.
Yeah.
That's wrong, but I'm going to do it anyway. This is the music from Sutekh's death and 15's weird speech. Let's listen.
Strange little piece of music. I think it's unsure of what it's saying narratively, emotionally. It's very busy.
Yeah. Is it sad? Is it? Yeah.
Yeah. I think, much like the dialogue in this scene, it's unsure of what it's supposed unsure exactly of what's happening, of what it's supposed to, which is strange, isn't it, for Murray Gold? Because normally with Murray Gold, no matter what's happening on screen, he's got an emotion that he's selling.
Yeah.
And in this case, I don't know what it is. I'm not sure exactly what's happening here.
The dialogue is confusing, so the emotions are confusing here. Gabriel Wolf's not confusing. He's giving his all with those no's that he's doing, but yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, he's great. And it is really strange, isn't it, that does the Doctor want to kill him? Does he not want to kill him? I don't understand.
It's weird because, yeah.
It's really strange that, like you mentioned that we've already seen callbacks to the previous time that Sutekh
Yeah, we saw it again.
was killed, but Doctor Who killed Sutekh, and then, Sarah Jane says, he's dead, Sutekh is dead, and Tom Baker goes, at last. And so we know for sure that Doctor Who intended to kill Sutekh, but no, yeah.
It's not ambiguous. Like he says, it's 8,000 years ahead. He's dead now.
Yeah.
It's done. He says in the 4th Doctor episode. So yeah.
Yeah.
Strange storytelling. The music, I don't know there. It's mournful. It's very busy without feeling like it's saying much. It's a bit odd there. I do like the male choral thing at the end, but yeah, I don't know what's quite going on there musically. Bit of a weird one.
Yeah.
The next bit of music is, I don't know if you listen to the commentary. What's his name? The actor for Morris. He's a national treasure. Everyone keeps telling me.
Lenny Rush.
Lenny Rush. Apparently, it's like a pizza party at Unit. It's such a weird workplace.
Yeah, very corporate
thing. Like they're this very high tech organization, and they're doing let's all stay late and have pizza.
Yeah.
Like a regular. Like many offices in the world. Anyway, apparently...
Do you know what I think? Sorry to interrupt. Do you know what I think that's supposed to invoke there? I think it's... do you remember the end of the first Avengers film, 2012?
Oh, the shawarma scene. Yes. Ah. Yeah. 100%.
The shawarma. I think what we're doing here is a bit of a... Yeah, I think we're doing a bit of like a team-building corporate exercise.
Because Unit Tower itself is obviously... like a Stark Avengers Tower reference.
Yeah.
And I think this episode, it's obviously influenced by the newer Avenger films, the dusting, leftovers-y death stuff. 100%. I totally can see that. Anyway, Lenny Rush was actually eating the pizza. You know how, like, if you're an actor, you're not really meant to swallow the food because you're going to be doing many takes. Apparently, Lenny Rush was actually eating the pizza a lot, and so... like the camera assistants and whatnot were getting worried because he'd like have a line coming up and he'd just be like chewing away before the camera would come onto him. Anyway, so the scene where Morris is actually eating the pizza, this is the music during that scene. Unit pizza party music. Let's listen to that.
I don't like this. It's mawkish, saccharine. It's
mawkish.
Yeah, Murray Gold on autopilot.
That's the word for it.
And who can blame him?
I'll make the tea.
Oh my god, yeah. Between this mawkish music and I'll make the tea and the Sutekh rehabilitation. Just crazy. Just totally like. I've no words for this. Yeah, not happy with this at all.
It's. I know this isn't musical, but I don't. She's so Susan Tech, Susan Triad. She's a multimillionaire or a billionaire or something. Why is she? I know Unit pay well. That's why Donna joined. But why is she going off to make the tea? I don't. Because the doctor says.
Oh, because she's so nice.
Your life is valid. Like your life wasn't like a fake thing. You got a real life. So that implies her tech CEO career is real. And like not a, Sutekh manipulation. So I guess she's just so nice. She wants to go make the tea for Ibrahim. There's a bit of a fight over him, I guess. Kate and Susan and everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that music. It's not like bad music. That's not what either of us is saying. It's just a bit of an eye roll. The music.
No, it is. Yeah, that whole scene. That whole episode.
Well, the episode kind of ends there. Then we get a separate 10-minute episode is how I kind of see this. We have the Sutekh story.
Yeah. We get a Ruby Sunday short film.
And the Ruby story is pretty good and the Sutekh story is pretty... Anyway, the music for the Ruby thing. So this is when we learn the name of the mother, Louise Miller. 15 gives we invest things with significance speech. And then a little bit later, we'll skip forward to the music a bit to my name is Ruby, that bit.
Yeah, let's listen.
Yeah, I don't know about you. I've got the feeling of autopilot again.
I kind of like the first bit in like the mother reveals significant stuff, but the bit "my name is Ruby," it's sweet.
Yeah.
But I actually think the music makes that slightly worse. I think the music's actually not ruining, but I think it's dampening what Millie's doing and the scene's doing there. It's already very syrupy and sweet. The embrace of
Yeah.
I think the music is going so. I'm sure Russell wanted this because he's very like Murray said at that concert that unveiled this sort of music. He's very firm in what he wants. So I'm so sure Russell was pushing happier. But I feel like it has this weird effect where if it's already a very happy scene, if the music goes too happy, it kind of pulls you out a little bit because it just goes kind of too much on all corners.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But I like the first bit, just the gentler piano stuff I thought was nice enough. It was just when it was getting bouncy, dun 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 dun, it kind of pulled me out a bit.
Yeah, I've got that same feeling as earlier, that kind of advertisement feeling. It's all a bit. I think if the music isn't working for me in this way, I think the problem lies with maybe LCD's creative direction, and I think the problem exists mostly at a textual level.
I think both Russell and Moffat are they're not laid back when it comes to the music. From what I've absorbed from the interviews and confidentials and stuff from them, they both seem to be pretty... Russell feels a bit more full throttle on I specifically want this, and of course he's had a much deeper, longer relationship with Murray. But Moffat as well seems... He writes his scripts in a very aesthetically specific way. And so I think both of them have very specific things they want from Murray. It's just kind of curious. They want very different things in lots of ways, but... this is why it's hard to talk about composers. Is like, imagine bashing the 50th score. Why were they reusing this and that? And it's like, that's not Murray wrote music they didn't use. Like the composer just composes. They're not even one that's as storied and high and as important as Murray is. At the end of the day, they're writing the music. That's kind of their job. And there's other people who have more power than that. But yeah, Murray can be used for good and he can be used for evil, I guess, is the thing.
Yeah.
Then, so the scene where we're in the cafe, I do like the kind of storybook setup of it's contrived, but not in a bad way. Like ordering the adopted daughter saying her name because you say your name when you order a coffee, and so then the biological mother, hearing the name and she knew the name. Like it's very contrived, but in kind of a cool way. Like I like the setup of that. This is the music in that scene. Let's listen to that.
I really love this one. The music here is
Yes. Yeah.
doing a lot of heavy lifting, as is often the case with Murray Gold. That's not to, I think this is quite a well, a good moment in an episode that I otherwise don't have much time for. It starts really tentatively and kind of curious.
Yes, that's the word. Yeah. Tentative.
That's the impression that I get from it. It's got a curiosity, and then it sustains these high notes that feel like first steps.
Yes. Yeah.
And then it's rushing. It gushes out to tell the story musically, and the baby steps they turn to sprinting, and then it crescendos into this just
absolutely
beautiful, like an explosion of emotion. It tells us the whole story of Ruby's life to her mother, all the years that her mother missed. It's so beautiful.
It's so, because we know that music so well by now. I love that when we're doing that kind of tentative, like you're saying, it's not rhythmic the way that her theme usually is. It's curious. It's kind of wondering, baby steps. I love how you put that. Yeah. I love because we can kind of feel we want it to match up and be played how it's normally played. So there's the big sense of catharsis as Ruby gets more confident and everything goes well. Yeah, it feels like a real journey how the music works in that scene. Love it. Really, really great storytelling there. The last bit of music, obviously it all works out with Ruby and her mothers. So she leaves 15 at the end. This is some of the music from that scene. There's a lot of music in that scene, so we'll just hear bits of that. Let's listen.
I really like this. It's got a great climax to an emotional arc. It's almost at odds with what Millie is playing in that scene, which is kind of regret at having to leave, almost like being forced out by coldness in TARDIS. But regardless of that, Ruby's theme, it's always had like an air of solemnity.
Yes.
But now it feels more. Actually, let me stay on that point. It's always had an air of solemnity and someone who's curious and unsure and uncertain and that it's felt that what I was saying earlier with that Mel theme, what I assume to be Mel's theme about Marigold capturing and jarring these souls of characters. That's really what Ruby's theme has been, and this is like a completely new take on that. It feels more like maturity and self-assuredness.
Yes. Yeah.
And as the TARDIS dematerializes, you expect like a more somber note to finish as the music slows, but that assuredness sustains and it ends on that male choir. It's beautiful.
It's not tentative at all, like the last bit of music. It's very it's so sustained, and it feels so it's sad, but in like that growing up way is what it feels like to me. It's like having a good cry is what that music feels like to me. It's like big emotions, as Chibnall would say, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's such a weird scene because I feel like 15's emotions are so bizarre to me in that, like the way he smirks when she's like saying "I love you," and
that's very cruel. I feel.
I find 15 so hard to scan in that scene, but Ruby I find very easy to read. What she's doing there, it's she's found what she was looking for. She doesn't want to leave her best friend, but she's got so much going on in the real world right now, in the ordinary worlds. Although it's not very ordinary what's happening here. It is extraordinary what's happening in her home life, but it just feels like a big emotional outpouring, and I love the music. It's very, very bombastic, but not in like a big wanky way with,
No.
drums and brass. It's just, it feels very Ruby. The big strings really sustaining those notes. It feels very in sync, and tonally it all works with her. But yeah, it's my favorite version of her theme has still got to be
Devil's Chord.
the piano one in the Devil's Chord. But this version I really like as well.
Me too. Yeah, really, really beautiful, really poignant way to cut this Ruby Sunday story off.
Yeah.
And I'll be interested to see the later variations of it. Because I think that now that we're at the end of season 1 and we're looking towards a kind of redefined Ruby Sunday, perhaps with a time skip even in season 2, I'd be curious to see how that theme evolves.
And I'm sure that I hadn't even thought about this yet. Our new companion will get a new theme. That'll be exciting.
Yeah, how exciting!
Yeah. The biggest issue I have with season 1 is I just don't feel like Russell is a brilliant character writer. And so I don't know why this season didn't spend more time doing character writing for 15 and Ruby.
Yeah.
But at least Murray did very good writing for 15 and Ruby's own music. And their music is so...
Yeah. He does a lot of storytelling with his music for Ruby Sunday in particular.
Yeah. There's so many separate components to both of their themes, and there's so many different ways they were varied across the season. So it's almost like what I wanted Russell to be doing with the writing, Murray was often doing with the music. So really love Ruby's theme. A great ending to it there. It's a bit of an odd scene, their farewell in some ways, but very emotional. Millie and Murray are doing great work there. It's a nice ending to the season in that sense.
Absolutely.
And that brings us to the end of Empire's music. Any other thoughts on the music for the finale?
I like this. I don't want to give the wrong impression with what I said at the beginning. I don't dislike the music of this episode generally. I think there's a lot of really good stuff here. I think the best stuff of this finale two-parter does come from the first part, but there is some really great stuff in this. Yeah, what a fantastic, poignant piece of music to finish on. So another great season of music from Murray Gold. I hope he stays forever.
Oh yeah. I'm really very happy with the music for this season. Even Space Babies, I love the music for. I love the musical storytelling in Space Babies. The way it uses like 12's music is so fascinating. Yards and Bubble, which are like the interesting episodes of the season, have the interesting music of the season, which is great. Boom has a really interesting texture. The point of Chord is not to have much music, so it is what it is. Rogues are kind of more typical Murray score, but that's very good. Lots of very good stuff in there. These finales, like we've talked through, really interesting stuff. Church had great music. I'm so glad he's back. And the 60th music was all great. It's just a real joy to, even as I'm less keen on Russell than I thought I would be when he was announced to be coming back, I could never be unhappy with Murray. Very overjoyed that he's here and doing what he's doing. Absolutely. He's the beating heart of Doctor Who. Yep, he's brilliant. So, always nice things to say about him, except release the damn soundtracks. Yeah. I guess that does us. Yeah. Great. Okay, cool. Good to speak to you. And that properly wraps us up for Empire of Death. The main discussion with Gig and Mirrors, the cinema recounts of Virgil and Nilso that Gig and I listened in on, and the music discussion I had there with Tyler. Those 3 discussions were all recorded in the days and short weeks following the finale's airing. What we've missed in the time since is hearing your thoughts on the finale. What did you think of it? It was a real head-scratcher, at least to my eyes and ears. So, as always, we'd be very keen to hear your thoughts on it. If you went to the cinema airings, were your showings like the ones we heard about? If you watched it normally, like Gig and I did, were your opinions like Gig and I's, or very different, or more like Mirrors', or a bit of all 3? Let us know what you thought of it. And thank you very much for listening as always. Cheers.